Ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you for coming out to tonight's Development Review Commission meeting. We're going to come to order. Today's meeting is August 14th, 2018, in case anyone lost track. I'd like to say that my wife has given me some very keen advice. She said that the success of chairing a meeting such as this relies very much on not wearing the shirt that I had picked out this morning. So we'll see how this shirt does instead. And we'll thank her for her fashion advice. We have a few items on our agenda tonight. Let's pull this up. We've switched to iPads, so if we're a little behind on catching up our documents, give us a moment, we'll get there. On our consent agenda tonight, we have only one item, which is the replatting of the properties at the northeast corner of Baseline Road and Roosevelt Street. But I don't want you to confuse that with the second case on that property, which is the case related to the restaurants and the drive-thrus. So if you do wish to hear us go into full discussion on the replatting, we can do that. Otherwise, we will approve it on consent. If you, well, you know, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's do a couple other things before trying to do many things at once, actually.
I'll shuffle the papers here for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, fellow commissioners. So let me first introduce the staff that we have with us. For city staff, we have Ms. Diana Kaminsky, Suparna Dasgupta. We have Dalton Guerra joining us. We have Obina Kingsby and Cynthia Gerard. On my left, we have Commissioner Johnson. We have Commissioner Amorosi, Commissioner Sumner. I am Chairman Lyon. To my right is Vice Chair DiDomenico. And we have Commissioner Thornton and Commissioner Brown. Now I read you the preamble for our meeting. Is that right? Let's do that. So, the Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has power to recommend and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, business, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interest of public health, safety, and general welfare. All right, so first item on our agenda is going to be the approval of our meeting minutes from our previous meeting, June 12th. We have discussed those minutes and have not found any errors we wish to correct. So I will entertain a motion regarding the approval of said minutes. Commissioner Sumner.
Mr. Chair, motion to approve study session and regular session meeting minutes from June 12th, 2018.
Okay, motion put forth by Commissioner Sumner and seconded by Commissioner DiDomenico. All those in favor by show of hands, please. And the motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention, correct? Okay. So Sumner, taking some notes here myself. All right, let's move on to our consent agenda item. As I say, we have one item, which is the replatting of the property at Baseline Road and Roosevelt Street. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to have this item heard? Now let me ask you, we have a second item later which deals with the drive-thrus and the restaurants themselves. That's a separate item. This first part is only the dividing up of the property lines. Do you wish to hear that part? All right, then we will hear it. Okay, so our consent agenda item has been removed.
Mr. Chair, I have just one housekeeping item. We have two comment request cards up here that list two separate case items. So I'm not sure if that's just a mistake or if you, because they're two unrelated cases. So I want to make sure we're putting you in the right pile to speak. Amanda Is it Shiba? Schwa.
I'll defer to the second item, the one.
Okay, so describe the case, rather than using the case number, you're talking about the two restaurants with the drive-throughs?
Item number 6. Or I don't know, looking at it.
Oh, you're looking, okay, so per the agenda, it would be what's listed as item 6 on our agenda.
So you wish to
Okay.
speak on the restaurants case?
Okay?
Thank you.
And the second is Melissa Moore. Same? Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Brown?
Chairman, I believe these two cases are tightly related, and they were 3 and 6 or whatever. They were separated on the agenda. Do we want to hear them consecutively so that the mass of the people can depart if they want to?
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, well said. All right. I don't think I've missed anything, have I? I believe I'm allowed to do that without a motion. All right, so let's go ahead and hear our first case, and we'll move on to item 3 will be first, followed by item 6. We will then hear item 4, the Garcia residence, followed by item 5, Clean Free Car Wash. So, can we please hear northeast corner baseline and Roosevelt Street, the replatting version?
Okay, okay, I guess I'll just use these overheads then, because I was just going to use the same presentation. Good evening, Commission Chair. The request for the subdivision plat is to clean up some property lines with the existing car wash. The cobblestone car wash includes 2 existing parcels and a remnant parcel that was sold to the car wash several years ago, but is not part of an existing plat. So this lot actually includes this little dog-leg piece here that's being used by the car wash. And this request for the plat is to create 1 parcel out of the cobblestone car wash site and then create 2 parcels on the remaining vacant lot here. So they're requesting a preliminary subdivision plat for the vacant lot, and then they would be going to council for a final subdivision plat to remove the property lines between these 2 and incorporate this into the car wash site. So, do you have any questions about the subdivision plat?
Thank you, Ms. Kaminsky. Any questions for Diana Kaminsky? Commissioner Brown?
Is the current zoning of that remnant parcel different than commercial?
Yes, it is.
I know it's vacant. I mean, it's pavement, so I'm not concerned really about that so much as.
So this area here is all the trailer park site, and that is the TP zoning. CSS is the commercial zoning for the car wash.
Okay, does the city have a higher taxation rate for commercial?
I'm
It's not critical, I'm just totally curious.
not a part of the financial part of.
Okay, those are
taxation.
trivial matters, I apologize.
Okay, any other questions for Commissioner Johnson?
Just a real quick question. Is there any intended change of use for that remnant parcel, or is it still going to remain parking?
It is being used and will be continued to be used by the car wash. It was a situation where somebody drew a line and went to the county and recorded something that wasn't an actual piece of property in terms of a plat. So we're cleaning up the plat to make it 1 parcel, and then the rezoning case, which you'll hear in a few minutes, would address the zoning difference on that lot.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions? Thank you, Ms. Kaminsky. We'd now like to hear from our applicant. The public portion will come later. If you'll hold your comments, please, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Darren Sender, Sender Associates. I'm here representing Avalon Investments on the plat as well as the rezoning, the DPR, and the use permits. I think Diana did an excellent job. The plat is...
All I wanted to ask is if whoever's talking to speak up, we can't hear them, and every time they move away from the mic, they fade off. So please.
If you could do your best.
Okay, thank you. I will. The plat is actually a cleanup, like Ms. Kaminsky said, it's a cleanup of the site. It was an illegal lot split many, many years ago. So when we came in for our site plan review, staff said, hey, this would be a great opportunity to do something good, clean this up. So we're cleaning up the 3 lots over on the cobblestone site, and then we're going ahead and splitting our lots on our site at the same time, kind of combining all of that, clean it up, and that rolls right into why we're rezoning that remnant parcel. For some reason it was zoned trailer park, and it's being used as part of the cobblestones site. So this will clean that up as well, bring it into conformance with the general plan, just like our site, make everything clean for the city as well as for us and Cobblestone.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sender. Any questions for Ms. Sender? No, I didn't think so. I thought we'd hear them separate, but sequentially. Okay, thank you, Ms. Sender. All right, so now comes a time when we can do a little bit of public comment, the public meeting section. If you have not already and you wish to speak on this particular part of this case, the replatting, please fill out one of the white cards at the back of the room and give it to city staff here. We need to keep records of who spoke and so on. And we'll be happy to hear from you. I think we can actually have you fill out the card after the fact. That's all right. We don't need to. We'll just take them out of order. Now that's all right. I guess we'll wait now. Why don't you come on down and speak to us, and you can take care of the paperwork after the fact. That's fine. So I'm going to tell everyone the way we're going to do things tonight is you'll have 3 minutes to speak. We're going to have some little lights here to help guide you. Green is going to come on when you start. The yellow will mean you have a minute left. And when it turns red, I will try to politely say, hey, let's wrap it up, folks. So if you would tell us your name and...
I'm Janice Mundy. I'm a Casa Fiesta resident. Yeah. So we live in the adjoining subdivision. My concern is the subdividing of that small plat into 2 businesses, not one. We're already having problems with the car wash throw there. There was a buffer zone at one time between our retention basins, which we use as parks, and their car wash. And now that they're using that, we have debris thrown over, like old wet rags and so forth. We've had repeatedly asked the management of the car wash, please do not let your people come over into our park and smoke. And sometimes it has not been regular smoke, it has been marijuana, obviously, by the smells. We've had problems with that. So that little buffer zone, yeah, maybe that's cleaning it up, but the buffer zone, now that it's used as the car wash, and if it continues to be used that way, we have children in that park, and it is a concern. The other is just the congestion of traffic at 2 businesses on that one small lot on Baseline. We know it has to be developed, but not with 2 very high traffic businesses. The problem is that we have one of the worst intersections for injuries in the city. 20 injuries on that lot, right there at Kyrene and Baseline. And people come around very quickly from Kyrene onto Baseline when the light's there trying to make the light. And all of a sudden you have a little entryway into this business, and it makes difficulties. I think we'll have more congestion and more problems. Those are my basic objections. I think one business on there that is lower traffic would be reasonable and could have support. We've had 2 deaths that I know of at that area and 20 injuries. This is a dangerous place. Making it more congested, I think, is unconscionable. Thank you.
If I may, ma'am. before you leave the podium, sometimes we like to ask questions. I would like to ask you one if I may. Would it be accurate to say your basic objection is that it's going to be used as two businesses rather than one?
Yes.
And you would prefer to see it set up as a single plat instead of two?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Any other questions for, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. You
Yes,
said it.
Monday.
Okay, any questions?
I'll just make a comment. The number of parcels does not have any bearing or factor on how many individual retail businesses could be constructed on the site. For example, the typical shopping center you go to with a Safeway in the middle and 20 other little businesses around it are probably all one parcel, or in many cases could just be one single tax parcel.
So it still can be subdivided,
Yeah,
even
the
if it's left
square
as one.
footage and the number of businesses that would be allowed on that parcel are not determined by the number of parcels themselves. It's strictly our ordinance that controls density and setbacks and square footage and height and those things that we're going to deal with in the second part of the second case.
It just makes it easier to subdivide. We have fought Taco Bell coming in there, and there were, when it was talking about putting, I think, 2 or 3 businesses.
What
yeah.
separate parcels would probably allow the developer to do or the property owner to do is sell them individually to 2 separate ownership groups.
And then we have a small lot with very definite traffic problems in egress and.
Yeah, but even if we left it as one parcel,
That
the
you could
same
still
2
have them.
businesses
Yes, I
in the
agree.
same configuration
That's
could
why
still be
the
brought
care,
forward.
yes, very much agree.
I just want to make that clear because it's not something that most people deal
It's
with on a
true.
regular basis.
I was not aware of
so.
that, but the main concern is that it's just a very dangerous intersection. We're practically landlocked. We can't turn left most of the time coming out of our subdivision. And now we can't turn left on Hardy either because the islands that were put in, the traffic runs all the way down to University most of the time.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, Commissioner DiDomenico. All right, come on down. If you can provide your card when you have a moment to city staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tom Buick, and I want to address specifically the replatting. And I'd like to start with a question. Is this the same as rezoning?
It is not. The rezoning is going to be handled in the second part.
All right. Concerning the replatting, the alleyway that's right now being used by Cobblestone, but has not been designated yet as a part of that property, has potential of enabling the utility and fire trucks, the garbage and so on, to access the other properties on the vacant lot. If you give that away, then the way that garbage truck and fire truck have to maneuver back on the baseline and then back around makes it a convoluted kind of routing for them. And there's a lot of potential or synergy that could be gained from allowing cross-access between those parcels. And that's the only point I want to make regarding replatting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question, if sir. Thank you. Commissioner Brown has a question for you.
Mr. Buick, you're asking if essentially that the Cobblestone car wash garbage trucks would be permitted to cross into this property. Would that also not allow more customers to make a cut through, which I think is perhaps an objection that some people are voicing?
You could designate it for utility or public vehicle or government vehicles only, but the answer is yes, and that's not necessarily a bad thing in that on-site circulation for that commercial use is something that ought to be considered, and by breaking it up as it's now designated in this proposal, is contrary to enabling better on-site circulation.
I follow you.
So Commissioner Brown, I think he's referring to the little dog leg just at the north of the car wash, which is not currently part of the car wash property.
No, I think he's talking about letting
right?
vehicles drive from cobblestone onto these new projects.
I think
We had some
both of
confusion.
those apply, yes. The piece of replat that's, I'm suggesting a consideration for you to enable it to maintain a public access is the dog leg or whatever you want to call it. But I also address the commissioner's point that the access between those vacant parcels and Cornerstone has merit for both public service vehicles as well as the general public.
Okay, before we get to Commissioner Thornton's comment, I'd like to say that each individual property is required to have its own fire apparatus access and refuse truck access, utility access, which I believe Cobblestone Car Wash is already in conformance for. And it appears to me that their belief is that that's a sensible division of the plat, and that I'm inclined to say, let them make that decision. They own the property. Commissioner Thornton.
I was just going to ask to pull up a visual, so because I'm just not clear about what he's requesting, but what you just said.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Buick, unless there are other questions. Okay, we're going to see. Sure, come on down. Come on down and point. It's your comment.
Thank you. And I don't mean to take up too much time. This is, or used to be, an alleyway. And that access, including this dumpster, at this point, I don't know if you can see that or not, but at the nearest point to the canal is the cobblestone utility access for garbage. It would be propitious to be able to have that access continued on through here rather than what this convoluted movement is now required to come out and perhaps go in and come out. And I'm just suggesting that there's value in that cross connection.
Okay.
Any questions?
I think we got it now. Thank you, Mr. Buick. All right. Anyone else who wishes to speak on the replatting portion? Seeing none, I will close the public. One more? All right. Come on down, sir.
Sorry to be tardy.
No problem.
My name is Bruce Mundy, and I'm a resident in Casa Fiesta subdivision. I would just like to point from a historical note that all of the properties involved, Casa Fiesta, the apartments to the west, Cobblestone, the vacant lot, that was all trailer park. And it was all taken out. The 98 homes in Casa Fiesta were built there. The apartments were built in front of them. And Cobblestone was built there by splitting the lot. And now you're asking to subdivide the lot again. There are laws against excessive subdividing. I'm not saying that that is necessarily what we have here, but I do point that out, that there are laws to prevent people from subdividing and subdividing and subdividing to the point of ridiculousness, and the usage of all the water that we don't have at this point anyway, that we like to pretend that we do.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Munday? Monday, was it?
Yes, Monday.
Okay, seeing none, well, thank you. All right. If you can all make sure you get a card to our city staff in a timely manner. Anyone else? All right, so we're going to close public comment now. Thank you. At this time, we'd like to have our applicant come to the podium, and if you care to address any of those comments, you're free to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll reserve response to those comments to the zoning case, which they more pertain to. And I'd just like to tell you, this plat applies and meets all subdivision plat requirements with the city of Tempe and the county. So we would appreciate your support of this application for the subdivision plat. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Didn't think so. Thank you, Ms. Sender. So I'd like to start doing things just a little differently, if staff will indulge me. Before we get to our commissioner comments, I would like to do a quick restate of the fundamental question before us. Would you indulge us with that, Ms. Kaminsky? Yes, please.
Okay, so the request before you is for a preliminary subdivision plat. It's to address the vacant lot, which has never been subdivided previously. So they are required to do a preliminary subdivision plat before they can move on to a final plat. And this preliminary subdivision plat would identify new property lines for the two. It keeps going in and out, Suparna. It's would create a new property line between the two new lots on the vacant and would remove the property line in the middle of the cobblestone site, as well as incorporate that small remnant piece at the north end, so that would be creating one lot. I did want to address one of the comments that came out from the public, if that's okay. In creating the two smaller lots through the preliminary subdivision plat, it actually lessens the intensification of the site, because you have new setbacks that each new property would have to follow within the zoning. So as one large lot, if you were to do a large office building, let's say, you would have setbacks around the perimeter of that entire property. By creating two lots, those same setbacks are applied to a much smaller footprint. So it actually reduces the amount of intensification of the two new lots. And it is meeting the criteria for a subdivision plat, so we're recommending support of this request.
Thank you, Ms. Kaminsky. Commissioner Amorosi, you have a question?
Yes, Ms. Kaminsky. So if there are two lots and they get separate owners, it looks like the driveway is on the lot to the left, or the west. How does the owner that's to the east maintain access?
We have requirements for shared cross-access agreements, and that would include the parking lot and the driveways.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's have commissioner discussions. Anyone have any comments they wish to share with us, or shall we move to a motion? Commissioner Sumner first, please.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question on the question that Commissioner Amorosi asked. So are the conditions for cross-access easements part of the plat, or are they part of the development plan?
I don't have the report in front of me. I think it's over there. We would be doing this as part of the final subdivision plat. So this is the preliminary subdivision plat. And any of the access requirements is something they would have to do prior to pulling building permits.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner DiDomenico. Sorry, Vice Chair DiDomenico, excuse me.
That's it. On both. For the sake of the neighborhood, and Diana probably brought out the most important part, by subdividing the parcel into two smaller parcels, you kind of create that center property line, which causes setbacks from that center line to be created, which reduces the amount of square footage that could be built here. Doesn't change what could be built. You could still do 2 restaurants or 3 without the subdivision. You could do a multi-story office building. You could do apartments. You could do lots of different things. So this doesn't really address the issue of what could go there and how disruptive it could be to traffic and noise and all those other things that neighborhoods care about. I don't see any legal standing or reason to not allow for the subdivision as requested before us, and I'll be supporting the case that we previously had proposed for consent. And as a matter of fact, I'd also like to move for approval of, as I stalled, put my glasses back on, I'd like to move for approval of PL 18072. That
Okay.
can't be right.
I think you meant 52. No, it's not 52. You're right. What is it? 172
Yeah, why?
is the zoning.
Yeah, it's both the same PL number. So the subdivision plat for 3 new lots for the northeast corner of Baseline Road and Roosevelt Street Retail and Cobblestone Car Wash, shown on our agenda as PL 180172.
All said. Okay, motion to approve. Do I hear a second? Okay, motion to approve by Commissioner DiDomenico and second from Commissioner Johnson. Sorry, motion to approve from Vice Chair DiDomenico. I have to get used to that, forgive me. And seconded by Commissioner Johnson. All those in favor by show of hands, please. And I believe I see 7, so none opposed. Motion passes 7-0. All right, so let's move on.
Chairman Lyon, just as a clarification in the future, if the PL numbers is the overall master case numbering, there is a case number for the subdivision, which is SBD in the staff report, if you wanted to say something separate for it. So the use permits also have their own separate record type, just for the next item, just so you know.
We need to read more closely.
Faster.
Yes.
The cover page of the report, the case numbers are in there.
I think
right
we're all just
underneath
getting
the
used to
background.
the electronic version of
Yes.
doing things.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dasgupta. All right, so let's move on and hear item number 6, which is the second half of the same PL number. That's not it.
Is it ready? Okay. Good evening,
Thank you.
Chairman Lyon and Commission. Diana Kaminsky, City of Tempe Senior Planner. The request before you is for a zoning map amendment with 2 use permits for drive-throughs for restaurant use and a development plan review for the design and the building elevations, site plan, and landscape for 2 new restaurant pads. The zoning map amendment, whoops, I think we have the wrong. There we go. The zoning map amendment is for the vacant parcel, and as we just discussed, the little remnant piece to the north of the CSS zoning that we have today. The request is to go from trailer park to commercial shopping and service, which would bring it in conformance with the general plan designation for commercial uses, and it would bring it into conformance with the adjacent property use. You see the site there on the right. The site is 1.62 acres. The 2 buildings combined would be 4,630 square feet. They're roughly 2,000 square feet each. The lot coverage is 6%, so it's they're relatively small building footprints within the 2 pads. The building height would be 26 feet to the tallest element. The building setbacks along the front of the, on the south side, which is baseline, would be 52 feet, 19 feet in between the 2 pad buildings, 39 feet on the west side on Roosevelt, and along the north side, 92 feet, and that's the setback from the building to the property lines. They're proposing 36% landscape area. They're providing the required 62 spaces for parking and the 8 parking spaces for bikes. The site circulation would be primarily accessed off of Baseline Road. The secondary access is off of Roosevelt, and there were 2 neighborhood meetings for this. The first one was held in June. Unfortunately, there was an issue with the advertising for that, so the applicant rescheduled and held another neighborhood meeting in July. One of the issues that you'll hear about tonight has to do with the access off of Roosevelt Drive. There were many people that requested there be no access or that it be modified in some form to prevent cut-through traffic going to the north through the neighborhood. The applicant did work with our traffic engineering staff on a driveway configuration that would enable people to make a right into the site going northbound in Roosevelt and a left out to go southbound on Roosevelt. The angle of the drive and a further extension of the median that you see up here that was in discussion with traffic engineering would come down a little bit further so that would prevent traffic from making a left out of the site. It would also make it difficult for anyone to come from the neighborhood into the site. So this was a design solution that was worked out with the traffic engineering. what this means is anyone living in this area would need to come down to Roosevelt and enter the site on Baseline to get into the main drive here. So the idea is this is the primary drive entrance for both sites. The driveways are on the west side of both buildings. The circulation would be like this for this one, and then up this way for this one. The refuse collection is at the north end of the site, and this drive provides the access for refuse to make the collection and get it back out onto the street without circulating in the parking area.
If I may, would you run through the median extension, and this time I'm going to watch your laser pointer?
Sure. So right now it's proposed like this. Traffic engineering asked for it to be extended slightly. It would be a landscaped median, so there would be enhancements to the landscape in that area, but the idea being it would make it more difficult for someone to make a left to go north.
A left into the site or a right out?
A right,
I see.
excuse me, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So this drive does facilitate the circulation for fire and refuse. As you can see here, they can enter here, do the collection, and leave this way. The idea would be to prevent them from having to come back and circulate through a busy parking area to get back to this drive here. So this does facilitate the movement of the larger vehicles through the site. The landscape plan is heavily landscaped. As I mentioned earlier, there is a significant amount of landscape, more than the code would require. They have a buffer along the north side, shown here with tipu trees. They're providing some additional landscaping along the east side, landscaping on both sides of the sidewalk for shade and enhancement along Baseline, as well as along the Roosevelt area here. These are just the floor plans for the two buildings. We don't have a lot of details on that. I'll defer to the applicant on the design. And the elevations, they are compatible between the two sites, so there's some uniformity in colors and materials. The materials board was available in the pre-session. They're using a combination of integral colored masonry and some painted stucco sections with some painted metal paneling as well. So each site has some variation, as you could see, but it's a variation on the theme. And these are the renderings they were provided. So staff received an early email after the first neighborhood meeting that was concerned about the fact that there was a misadvertising in the signage. So that was corrected by the second neighborhood meeting. I didn't receive any additional comments between that first neighborhood meeting and the second. And then after the second neighborhood meeting, I didn't receive any calls or emails until today, when I received an email asking if there was the availability for public comment today. And then I just found out there was an email sent to another staff person in our department, and it was also sent to the traffic engineer, but it was not sent to me. So that member of the public is here and has provided that letter for you to read into the record, but I was not aware of that until this evening. So we had 2 calls of inquiry and 1 letter of concern, and staff is recommending approval of the project with the use permits for the drive-through. It is in conformance with the general plan and would bring the site into conformance with the adjacent property. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so questions for Ms. Kaminsky? Vice Chair Domenico.
The one overriding traffic or egress, ingress question I have is if you could go back to the main drive off of Basin, right there. So what I perceive to be a deficiency or a future collision point is going to be westbound traffic entering the site through the main drive, takes a right turn into that driveway, and you have that being the spill point for the drive-through for the easternmost of the 2 buildings. So people coming in and making a hard right turn and having to stay to the right, people coming out of the eastern, I don't know if that's restaurant A.
This being the eastern one, so you come in here.
Yeah, and as they're coming in and making that right turn, you've got people leaving that nearest exit point of the drive-through. And where are they heading? They're heading to the main exit, which means they've got to cross the path of this incoming car, which is also crossing over a sidewalk where presumably there could be pedestrians. That's just the I think it's an unfortunate part of the design is I just see that being a place where there's going to be a lot of future fender benders. I don't know when the applicant comes up, they can talk about whether they think there's enough distance there. I mean, it's not a stacking issue. It's, you know, it's not a problem there. And it's a pretty tight right turn for somebody who's trying to use that easternmost business to make that hard right turn and keep cranking it to the right to get into the drive-through queue. So, just my comment.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Kaminsky.
Thank you.
All right, so we'd like to invite our applicant now to come and address us. Tell us all about your project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Again, Darren Sender, Sender Associates, here representing the applicant in this matter, Avalon Investments. And I'd just like to start. I've got a quick PowerPoint, and I'd like to show you a little bit. Diana obviously always goes over everything that I prepare, so she's already pretty much shown you everything that we need to show you, so I'll go through it fairly quickly. And then we'll be prepared to answer Vice Chair DiDomenico's question. I also am here today with Scott Whittington with Avalon. I'm also here with Jason Gregonis, the architect, and also Chuck Wright with the traffic engineering firm. So if we've got questions on those topics, we have people here to answer them as well. Quickly, I'm sure you're familiar with the site. Diana already went through this fairly well. General plan is commercial. We are bringing the zoning into compliance with the general plan. The general plan is commercial to the east as well, and so this area was always proposed for commercial development, such as what we're proposing today. Zoning, unfortunately, for us is trailer park. That's why we're here. We're here to rezone that to the commercial to comply with the general plan. And you can see kind of on the left just the location of the site. The red portion is what we're proposing to rezone and get the development plan review and use permits on, mainly the larger part to the west. And then the blue part is the cobblestone site. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into here, but there's several different...
we're familiar with the basics on the replatting part.
Right, perfect. What we're looking at here is the pad site, which we're going to develop, and we're not going to develop the remnant piece. The use permits only pertain to the yellow part, and the rezoning pertains to both. So if you have any questions about that, or if it's unclear, let me know. Again, rezoning from trailer park to CSS. And this rezoning requires a couple of different things from the zoning ordinance and state law. State law requires that all rezonings be in conformance with the general plan for the property. That's required of any city anywhere in the state of Arizona. Again, that's ARS 462. And in this case, it completely complies with that. That's one of the criteria for rezoning in Tempe, that it comply with the general plan. Again, the general plan is commercial. We're proposing rezoning it to commercial CSS, commercial shopping and services. The second requirement is typically that the zoning be compatible with the surroundings. In the zoning pattern in this area, as you can see, there's quite a bit of CSS in this general area. It's clustered around Kyrene on the northwest corner and the southeast corner. There's also quite a bit of GID, industrial zoning, in this area. There is the mobile home park zoning to the north, and then quite a bit of PCC1 to the west, some commercial zoning, but it mixed in quite well with R3 zoning with the existing apartments to the west and to the south. So if you travel along baseline in this area, the zoning pattern is a mixture of CSS, PCC1, and then some R3 up and down baseline. And I apologize, I don't have a wider image here, but I think this gives a really good idea of the surrounding zoning. That little bit of the R16 to the north is really the only single-family residential zoning within a radius of this property. So we conform with those two requirements for the rezoning of the property. In terms of the use permit, the use permit's only for the drive-throughs. It's not for the site plan or the actual restaurants. It's just for the drive-through areas. So when we talk about the criteria for the use permit, we really have to talk just about the drive-through portion of it. So answering the criteria questions, and there are several, the zoning ordinance has a standard set of zoning use permit criteria, and I don't know how much detail you need here, but these are standard use permit criteria. You probably see them all the time. Every use permit that comes in front of you has the same criteria it must meet. That there be no significant increase in vehicular pedestrian traffic, that there be no nuisance from odor, dust, gas, noise, vibrations, that it won't contribute to the deterioration of the neighborhood or downgrading of property values, that it be compatible with existing and surrounding uses in zoning, and that there's adequate control of disruptive uses. Those are their typical use permit criteria. And in this case, we meet all of those very, very well with, again, regard just to that drive-through. The drive-through and any development on this property would increase a little traffic over a vacant lot. There will be no nuisances from this drive-through. The ambient conditions with Baseline Road right there and the cobblestone the car wash next door create a higher ambient noise, vibration kind of feel to this location. And we feel this would be a wonderful buffer for the neighborhood from Baseline Road noise, as well as a little bit from the cobblestone noise. Obviously developing vacant land increases property values in the area as long as it's a viable, good development, which we believe this is. It is very compatible with what's around it, significantly compatible with not only the residential, but the apartments and the existing car wash next door. And there will be, for that drive-through, there will be adequate control of any potential issues. Again, these will be restaurants. The Starbucks actually will be on the west side, and there's a healthy food restaurant that is proposed for the east side that we can't announce yet, but there will be very upscale, nice restaurants. And then there's the use permit that's specific to the drive-through. And these are also requirements that must be met. And once they're met, the use permit is allowed to be approved. Again, we meet all of these criteria designed to minimize conflicts with pedestrian passing pathways. We've got adequate walkways and pedestrian ability to cross over to the walkways on the street, on the sidewalks. There's bus bays right there on Kyrene. So we want people to be able to access those and walk through them. We meet the width of the drive-through lanes at 9 feet. We meet the canopy coverage over the canopies of the drive-through pickup windows on the west side. There's additional criteria when it's oriented towards the street. I'm not 100% sure if we're oriented towards the street, but we meet these anyway. We meet the 20-foot landscape. We meet the screen wall height. We have the screen wall. We meet the dedicated pedestrian pathway, and we meet the separation of the 6 feet on our site plan. So for the drive-through in particular, we meet all of these criteria as well. As you can see, this is the on-site flow. Vice Chair DiDomenico had a question about that, and we'll have Chuck come up and answer any questions you have about that. But as you can see, the kind of the orange, and I apologize, I used an old site plan. We've relocated that northwest driveway access point a little bit, so I kind of tried to show the new configuration without changing the underlying site plan. But generally speaking, that's the way the flow works. And we will have control over the vehicles entering and exiting those points. Just by my house alone and by my office too, there's Kentucky Fried Chicken, there's Anita's, there's several other restaurants that have a very similar configuration with stop signs at the ends of the drive-throughs. Stop here, look for traffic, and then continue going through to the either to the aisle or to the turn right onto the Baseline Road exit. If there's a concern about any noise, we've got 4 buffers for the menu boards. If we haven't heard any concern about that, but I wanted to alleviate any of your fears that there might be some noise traveling from the menu boards. These boards have 3 to 4 layers of trees in between. We wanted to make sure no noise traveled over. Again, the ambient conditions here from the car wash are fairly high, and the ambient sound from Baseline Road is fairly high, so we're fairly confident that any noise created by this drive-through use isn't going to be above or excessively above that ambient noise. The separation from the menu boards, same thing. It's about 100 feet to the nearest single-family home. about 240 feet to the other home to the north there. So again, it's a significant distance away from those homes with significant amount of trees and open space in between. Just a map, kind of a general map here. We did hear about potential for cut through, and we've been working very hard with Julian in the traffic department about that, and that's where the resolution, the idea about putting that median in there and turning that driveway entrance onto Roosevelt southward. I talked to him today. He's very, very comfortable. He sent an email over to Diana as well. He's very comfortable that there will be, and in his words, with the right design, which is pulling that median down and really mitigating any right turns onto Roosevelt, he says it would be difficult, if not close to impossible, for drivers exiting the proposed development to take that westbound to northbound right turn. Again, and this is the city's traffic engineer we've been working with, and once we moved that driveway and added that longer median, this is his opinion, and obviously we agree with it, but we want to make sure that doesn't happen either. We feel that cut through traffic to that north, and talking with Julian as well, if you're going to go north to Hardy, it'd be a heck of a lot easier to take a right onto Baseline and a right onto Hardy. Then drive through a neighborhood that you're not familiar with, that you don't know where the streets go, and there's several turns you have to make just to get there. Right where it says Hardy, in between Hardy and Drive, that's the kind of one of the access points onto Hardy Drive. It's kind of hard to see there, but that's the access point. You'd have to find it through all those other roads. So while we understand their concern of the neighborhoods, we certainly don't want anybody driving through neighborhoods to access roadways. We feel it'd be fairly difficult to do that, and the access onto Baseline Road is significantly easier to utilize at this point, as well as Kyrene in this area is a major north-south access point. And again, Chuck can talk a lot more eloquently about the traffic issues than I can. In terms of development plan review, again, working very, very closely with Diana on design, materials, shading, trees, landscaping. Obviously, come up with some plans that we feel are very, very beautiful and elegant for this site. Rich use of materials, rich use of colors. I actually had to ask the applicant to look twice at the materials list to make sure they're okay with everything, because it's a neat mix. It looks great. We're so used to a lot of stucco, and blah, 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 as you know. We feel that this kind of goes above and beyond that for a 2,000 square foot building. I mean, these are very, very small buildings. I will not go through all of these, but you're probably fairly familiar with the development plan review criteria. There are 12 of them, and we feel, and as well as staff feels, we meet all of these. We tried to really articulate the buildings, place them closer to Baseline Road, use superior materials, use shading, use the shade structures, do some appropriate scaling of the buildings, do vehicular circulation that works well for this site and such a small site. Many other developers have looked at this property. Other development projects have tried to build something or at least design something on this site. Many of them have never gotten this far because it is such a small site. So, we feel that this is a wonderful design for this property. You can see here the elevations on the street. It's very low buildings. They're just about 2,000, 2,400 square feet. And as the discussion earlier talked about, the CSS zoning, which is in conformance with the general plan here, the CSS zoning could allow a heck of a lot more on this property. We are planning on developing very, very, very low compared to what is allowed. So, for example, building height in the CSS is 35 feet. In the single-family neighborhoods, 30. We're at around 26 or so. The lot coverage in CSS around 50%. We're at 6. Very, very low intensity development we're proposing here. Landscape coverage, 15% minimum. We're at 36, 37%. Very, very highly landscaped. Very small buildings, very small intense project, which translates into less traffic, translates into less people kind of on the site, and it translates into less trip generation. So our trip generation could be 2 to 3 times higher. And again, Chuck can answer any questions about that, but it could be much more that the general plan is asking for on this property. So we're really trying to take that into consideration to develop something that's very much more compatible with this area and much lower intensity for this area. Again, some more elevations coming from the other direction, from the west looking east. Again, looking at the materials board, I can't read that, but we've got some use of material standing seam. We've got some stucco. We've got some brick and stone painted integral. We've also got some wood features on the canopies. So it's got a very unique mix. And no, I do not know the type of wood it is, but I bet you the architect might know. But it's just a neat mix. You know, I really like to see that. I like to see the mix of materials. And what it adds up to be, we feel, is a very beautiful looking building. A landscape plan, again, a significant amount of 66 trees on a 1.6 acre parcel. That's a lot of trees. And that's not including all the shrubbery and the landscape that goes into all the other portions of the site. So we really wanted to make sure we had lots of coverage, lots of shade, lots of trees in there, working very closely with Diana on that too, to make sure that it's a highly landscaped site. Some of the landscape, I don't know if you can read that, but it's in the packet. So the site plan, again, in the DPR, the site plan shows two buildings. There's a patio on the southeast corner of each building. There's a little patio there. And on the west side of each building is the pickup window. Site circulation, let's see here. Site circulation, obviously, on Baseline Road here. Sorry, I've got my little pointer out again. Baseline Road here, site circulation this way. According to the traffic engineering, we're only allowed one access point on this street. It's too close to the access points over here in the car wash, and it's too close to Roosevelt to put two in. And we also cannot have a singular access point here with no other relief access point here for traffic. Speaking with Julian today, the reasoning for that, and it's something we always look into, you don't want a cul-de-sac development. You don't want somebody just having one access point. You want to give people that option. If there's an accident on Baseline Road at that driveway, people can't get out. We want to make sure that there's adequate traffic flow, and that's an emergency kind of issue. Really what we're looking at is an adequate traffic flow through the site. Having the buildings, and this is a pretty good development plan for this property as such a small parcel. Having access surrounding the buildings and then one in, one out kind of access point really flows well. Refuse and fire are in support. The police department has looked at the plans. The SEPTED, all the SEPTED requirements are met. And you can see again the flow through the site. If you're coming through Baseline, you can come through here into the drive-through. You can come straight through into the drive-through. Again, stop signs at the end, at the exits of each drive-through lane would prevent people from just kind of barreling through. Putting the driveway angled down like this, this is what we changed. It used to kind of just go straight into the access over here. This is an exit only from the apartments. So it's an exit only driveway. So lining those two up was not as important as typical, but still wanted to line them up a little bit. So we changed this driveway here to point southward to force people south, and then adding this here, pulling this little median down further. According to Julian and our traffic experts, doing a right turn, you'd see a median there. It would be very, very difficult, like he said, or not impossible to actually make a right turn there. He said people would not want to turn right onto Roosevelt.
So you are okay if we made that a condition of approval, that median be extended?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We just don't know how much yet. That's what we're working on, so that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Talking about a little bit about the surroundings, I forgot to mention going back, we have support letters from both apartment projects to the west and to the south, as well as obviously from Cobblestone. They're excited, all of them are excited to see a new restaurant experience there, something they can drive to as well on their way to or from work, and they're very excited to see that. And then we just did the plat, so we don't really need to see the plat any further. Talking a little bit about the property. Again, this was the site next door of the old Antlers Bar. I don't know how many of you remember that, but I wanted to call this the Antlers Development. but, you know, it's not really on the Antler site. See, Commissioner Emery, see, he remembers. Yep, so, you know, there's a lot of history here, but there's also a lot of moving forward here. We're trying to provide restaurants and something servicing this neighborhood and the residents of all the apartments and everybody who lives on this street, which is, you know, there's a lot of residential on Baseline Road down in this area. Want to provide another option. There's not a heck of a lot of dining options in this location. You have to go pretty far over to Mill to find some restaurants, and then you kind of have to go sporadically towards the west down Baseline. I think there's a KFC. The Taco Bell actually went across the street. They're over there right now, and I think there's another restaurant going in, but you know, it's not a huge restaurant area, and I think this will provide a nice option for those residents. And we've done everything we can. They held the 2 neighborhood meetings. There was a typo in the address, so that's why the neighborhood meeting had to be re-advertised and redone. I think it said East Baseline instead of West, so we apologize for that. I did make contact with the HOA management company last week, but honestly, I just got involved in this case about a week and a half ago, so we were trying to figure out timing of things, and we were looking at having me cover something else, so I'm covering this tonight, and I'm helping them out. So we talked to the management company. I asked them if they would like to meet, and I have not heard back yet from them, so we would love to. That's fine. But we understand their issues, and we understand that we think with the city's input and with our experts' input, we think we've really resolved those issues, and we certainly don't want to impact their neighborhood at all. I wouldn't want that in my neighborhood, and we feel that this is a very good design. The changes really help mitigate any concerns or problems that might have with that design. And with that, if you have any questions, we'll certainly come up here, but we would certainly appreciate your support of all of the requests in front of you, which include the rezoning, the DPR, and the 2 use permits. And we would appreciate your support tonight and approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sender. Before I ask for questions, I'm going to state that our digital packet here includes your traffic engineers.
The statement, yep.
Yes, thank you. Losing my words. And we've had a chance to review that, so we're not going to, well, I'm not going to ask to hear that information again, but the short of it is the traffic engineer certifies that the increase of traffic would be minimal, and I believe that to be so. If anyone else wants to hear from the traffic engineer, we're certainly welcome to ask. So, do we have questions for our applicant? Commissioner Amorosi.
Just a quick question, Mr. Chairman. One of your slides, Ms. Sender, said that the hours of operation would be till 11 p.m., but I noticed on the use permit that the restaurants are only open till 9 p.m. You're aware of that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Emery, I did notice that discrepancy, and I think we have to work that out. What did we end up with on the hours of operation? 11. Okay, yes, 11 o'clock, 11 p.m. And then the stipulation states 10 currently.
Page 4, Ms. Kaminsky. Use permit.
Does it say 11? Okay, it says 11, yes. Yeah. Okay, great.
The times were based on what was originally submitted.
Oh, yeah, use permit, it says 10, correct, on number 4?
The use permit was 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily based on what I had previously been given.
I'm sorry, am I looking at the wrong thing? I see 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. for the coffee shop and 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. for the lunch dinner restaurant.
Right.
On page 4 under use permit.
Oh, it's in the staff report portion. Yeah, that should be 10. The stipulation is 10 for both properties.
My apologies.
All right, so 10 p.m. is the correct answer.
Okay. So that's stipulation 4 under use permit.
Thank you.
And I assume staff is okay with that?
The stipulation is written to 10 p.m.
Okay, other questions for Ms. Sender? Okay, seeing none, well, thank you, and we'll open our public comment section.
Thank you. And if I could, Mr. Chair, I'd like to have a few minutes for rebuttal at the end,
Of course.
if you feel it's appropriate.
Of course, always.
Thank you.
All right, so we have quite a few people who've asked to speak or have their comments read into the record here, so I'm going to do my best with your names. Please forgive me if I don't get it right. This is a comment from Brittany Arturez, I think, which she wishes read into the record. I object to the division of the vacant lot in hopes of preventing two businesses to take residence on the lot. This will likely add more congestion to the neighborhood where one lot may allow for the possibility of a single business. Oh, and I have a second one here. All right, you're in luck. You get two comments today, Brittany. I disagree with this proposal to put the two drive-throughs in the lot at Baseline Roosevelt, mainly because of increased traffic, and it will create, which it'll bring to the neighborhood. The restaurants will likely add congestion, and it'll be too tempting for customers to exit onto Roosevelt. Thank you, Ms. Arturez. Here's one from, I believe last name is Schwartz. I'm sorry, I can't read the first name. Oppose rezoning and replat. I echo the concerns of the residents who spoke against the replat. Changing it will allow invite higher traffic businesses in a dangerous location. I also oppose rezoning for drive-throughs as it would disturb the neighborhood and cause dangerous traffic. Now we have, I believe this is Melissa Moore. It says you'd care to speak, is that right? Oh, so if you'd like to speak still, you can come to the podium. We'll give you your 3 minutes. I will tell you that the format isn't, we're not necessarily going to try and satisfy your questions, but we'd be happy to take your concerns into consideration.
Okay, thank you. I'm a resident of Casa Fiesta, and I haven't been able to attend the other meetings, so maybe some of these questions have been addressed already. I do have safety concerns. I have 2 small children. As far as what other concerns that have been mentioned as far as the traffic, also being, safety concerns. When you have any retail come in, you get all sorts of walks of life in the area. So I'm concerned with, vagrants even, walking around, hanging around our neighborhood. The ingress-egress issue, you kind of mentioned that. That was kind of a concern because there are only 2 entrance and exiting points from our neighborhood. So should there be, a major accident along Baseline Road, a lot of people try to cut through our neighborhood to get to Hardy and however else to get around. So I think, having these restaurants, that just could pose another issue as far as, accidents and whatnot.
Okay.
And the drive-through, I guess one of the requirements as far as the speakers not being a noise issue, I'm not sure how much those sound walls would really muffle the sound to our neighborhood, being within 100 feet of some of the residents there. So I think that's pretty much what, the pedestrian issue as well. Every day, you always have to, when you're turning to the neighborhood off of Roosevelt, there's always people on bicycles, people walking. You have to, wait on Baseline until they pass to turn in. And so I just wonder how much more of a congestion issue that's going to cause and more accidents potentially.
Okay, thank you. So since we have so many people who wish to speak tonight, I'm not going to ask if you have a question. You're just going to have to speak up. Fair? Thank you, Ms. Moore. All right, Amanda Chia, I think? Chua, sorry. What's going on with this guy? I can't get their names right.
All
right, I'm a resident of Casa Fiesta, and I do walk. I have a dog, and I walk, and I see a lot of bicyclists. We try to be a Tempe bike-friendly area, and the canal is a major attraction for that area. And I do notice that on Baseline, there's a bit of a confusion for the bicyclists. They would love to just continue along the canal and go to the park, the Kiwanis Park. But there isn't a crosswalk for them, and they have to go to this very busy intersection that's at Kyrene and Baseline. So I do know that there are bicyclists, and they just look around and they just go regardless of whether there is a pathway for them or not for the canal. So knowing that there's 4 bike racks for each of these 2 design businesses, I'm not surprised. I think they're going to need more. But I'm really worried about the traffic. I have a dog. I walk around regularly, and I know that this area, there are a lot of pedestrians with the rentals, luxury rentals that are across the street, and there's a lot of traffic. So I can see why there's an interest in restaurants coming into this area. But we've just been told, no, you can't do this. There's no way to put another light on Roosevelt. Because of the light that's at Kyrene and Baseline. Already currently, there is a lot of near accidents, and I can see a lot of confusion with the current traffic. And adding these 2 businesses that they're going to have high traffic, that rely on drive-throughs for their businesses, it's a concern. I have no problem with this being commercial. I have a problem with the use permit. The comment earlier about the cobblestone being noisy, well, they close when the sun sets, and there's still traffic later. And so I just want to say that, at the time when the residents are home, that is, there's still noise there. But my primary concern is traffic. It is well known that there is a bus stop that is there. It causes a lot of, and it is a well-used bus stop, and the cars are confused. And I'll tell you, even though we're trying to direct traffic so that it flows a certain way, there's going to be folks who want to go the other way. They didn't plan that. They just wanted their coffee. They wanted to get their lunch, and they're going to want to go the opposite direction. They're going to turn left onto continue on their way to the I-10 or something like that. And guess what you find out? The next intersection of Baseline and Hardy is probably more dangerous than the one that's on Baseline and Kyrene. And I just feel that if people are trying to be prevented from turning
If you could
left
wrap it up,
going
please.
eastbound. Yes?
If you could wrap it up, please.
Oh, sorry. Well, I think there should be some reconsideration based on the higher level of traffic, and because I do think the city of Tempe has a duty to make the streets safe, and I do think that the city of Tempe is making itself vulnerable to potential lawsuits based on the design, based on the fact that we have a lot of people who know that this is a high traffic area, and you're going to be creating an area that has more potential dangers to the public. Thanks.
All right, moving right along. I have a comment from Kathy Reichert, who doesn't want to speak, but please read my letter. That's right. This is a fun one. All right, so Ms. Dasgupta, would you give me 3 minutes, and we'll see how much of this letter I can read in 3 minutes. All right, go. Steve and Julian. It's addressed to Steve and Julian. I wanted to express my deep concern over the project scheduled for the northeast corner of Baseline and Roosevelt in Tempe. Pulling off of Roosevelt onto Baseline is currently a very dangerous endeavor. This is an extremely busy area with the light at Kyrene, Roosevelt, the car wash, the apartments on the south and north side of the Baseline, and the bus stop. How can it possibly be safe to add another turn in this area for 2 more businesses? Is the city of Tempe in that dire need for money that they're willing to jam a couple of businesses into an already congested area? I hope the designers, city staff, elected officials, and business owners are willing to be held responsible for accidents that will happen in this area. I know Taco Bell was looking at this site, but moved to a reasonable and safe location down at a lighted intersection at Hardy. I'm sure the reason for the move was due to the issues with congestion and safety. I live in the Casa Fiesta neighborhood. It's a nice, fairly quiet area where kids play, and I feel safe riding my bike on the street. I'm sure people will be cutting through the neighborhood with these businesses, making it unsafe for these activities. In fact, there's a park located directly adjacent to this planned project. 2 fast food restaurants and a kids' park side by side does not sound like a safe plan. I certainly hope city staff is not being pressured by elected officials or the business owners to make this project happen no matter what the consequences. I've lived here almost 20 years and I do believe there needs to be new development, however, not at the cost of the safety of the citizens. Thank you for your time and attention. If possible, please read this letter at the next meeting regarding this issue because I will be out of town. Happy Tempe resident Kathy Reichert. Thank you, Kathy. All right, somebody else's turn. Cynthia Callender says she wishes to speak. Please.
Visual up so that we can see this flat where the roads run and where the bus stop is. Not, yeah, that kind of gets it. Okay, and it doesn't show Kyrene there on the intersection.
That is Kyrene, yeah.
That is Kyrene.
Yep.
I am Cynthia Callender, and I have lived in Casa Fiesta for 20 years, but I also come to you with my job. I'm a Tempe Elementary District 3 school bus driver. And last year, my route took me from the Chaparral Trailer Park down westbound on Baseline, making a left-hand turn into 505 West Baseline. I can tell you that it was very difficult at that time, fighting traffic that is coming in the common left turn lane at me because they want to go over this direction and I needed to go this direction. And also when we try to exit off of Roosevelt to go left so that we can go get on the 60, we have to also worry about those people that are in the common left turn lane, you know, besides trying to wait for traffic to be able to get out. I am certainly not opposed to a Starbucks because I am addicted to Starbucks. I love my Starbucks. And healthy food is wonderful, you know, especially if I don't have to cook it. So my concern is the common left turn lane along Baseline Road for the residents of 505 West Baseline, for us, and also for the apartment complex that's there. And then the other problem that I have with this, with your extended median, where it'll come out is exactly where we have a school bus stop for elementary children to come out from the apartment complex, San Palmilla. They exit, they walk across there, and they get on our bus that is facing the other direction. So that's a concern for me with cars that would be coming out, you know, right where the buses are at. It's not my route this year, thank God, but there are other bus drivers that have to make that, and I don't think it's safe for the kids. All right, so summing it all up, I think if you put in a traffic signal, and I know that it's a huge no-no, but there are traffic signals that are very close in our city. I've lived here my entire life, and I think you should consider putting up a traffic signal there to help people so that they don't have to go into the common left turn lane. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Callender. All right, so let me say that we still have a substantial stack of these cards here. So lest we all be here for a very long time, let's do this. If your concern is traffic and you come up and speak, just say, my concern is traffic. We get it. If you've heard somebody already raised your same concern, just say, I echo what they said. We get it. And then you'll still show your support or your opposition. So I have Gail Buick, who says, I would like a no right turn sign coming out of the west end of the site. No right turn onto Roosevelt. Thank you, Ms. Buick. I have Mark, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh, this says you did not wish to speak, but you do wish to speak. Is that interesting?
That's Gail's comment.
Sorry, this is Gail Buick. You're not Gail, are you?
Yeah.
You never know. I met a male who was named Gail one time. Okay, so if you have a comment card, I'm still getting to it. Okay, thank you, Mr. Buick. Okay, Mark Cohen. Again, we ask that you be brief where you can.
I'll be as brief as I can. Again, my issue is, again, it goes to traffic. I've lived there for 20 years in Casa Fiesta. If you look at that picture there, Roosevelt onto Baseline, making the left turn off of Roosevelt to go east on Baseline is nothing short of impossible during afternoon rush hour. The traffic from the light at Kyrene backs up well past where Roosevelt is every single day. And if everybody who's lived in the neighborhood, absolutely. Adding another driveway right there will make that left turn even more impossible. I guess the question is, people who go to these restaurants, will they be allowed to make a left turn onto Baseline, or can they only make a right turn? Because if they can make a left turn, it's going to be accidents. I mean, this is public safety. The number of cars, and plus with the apartment across the street, there's cars in the suicide lane trying to make a left. Again, where there's 3 lanes of rush hour traffic, one car lets somebody in and then the car coming down the middle sideswipes them. It happens all the time. I've lived there 20 years. I've seen 100 accidents. I don't even know the number. This is only going to make more accidents.
Okay, we hear you. Here's a question
Just
for
a
you.
quick question.
Mr. Cohen.
Because I've driven down, I mean, I'm from here too, and I drive that, and I know how bad the traffic is in that area. What do you do if you want to turn left onto Baseline?
You're screwed.
So you don't do it, you go to the other.
You can go to Hardy, but Hardy is backed up from Baseline all the way to Southern. It's pretty much a 1-lane parking lot heading south to Baseline. It's like a cul-de-sac with no exits.
Diana, or
Pointers, because I think
honey, you're out of order.
Yeah, ma'am.
You are so out of order. Ms. Kaminsky, is that possible to make it a right turn only out of there? Does that make sense? What does traffic say about that?
Traffic engineering is not here. I can't speak to what happens in the right-of-way, and that really is a traffic engineering question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it possible for the people that are talking to point out where the problems are, where you can see it?
Ma'am, they are free to make their comments as they choose. If you wish to point, then you are free to point.
Is there a way to point? Technologically, I guess that's the question. Is there a way to point for us? Point? The table here? I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So folks, let's remember that we do have some standards on how we do things here, because we're not in Great Britain where we get to shout at everybody. We're in America, so if it's your time to speak, go for it. If it's not your time to speak, please respect others' times. So, that being said, Fidel Romero says, want results of traffic impact study. If one not available for discussion, then when? We do have that. All right, Jim Beal, do you wish to speak? I don't see a written comment here. It says, I do not wish to speak, but there's nothing written. Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Bruce Munday. Are you here, Mr. Mundy?
I'm also a 20-year resident of Casa Fiesta. And I agree, it's a lovely building. They're lovely buildings. I don't care what the buildings look like. My concern is with the traffic. There is no way to get out of the subdivision onto Baseline in the afternoon. There is traffic coming from 5 different directions, plus you've got people in the suicide lane, and you occasionally have a bus that parks in the lane on Baseline. It's the outside lane. So then you have cars coming around that. plus cars coming out of various intersections and whatnot. There are accidents there. You put in another exit, which is only 23 feet wide, by the way, to address your concern. You got cars going in, coming out, and trying to crisscross in the parking lot.
So, Mr. Monday, I believe you've heard
driveway.
these elements. Do you have new comments to add to this? I understand your concern about traffic.
What prevents people from parking on Roosevelt? They're designing the lot to keep people from being able to pull out and come in. But people could come down, turn onto Roosevelt, and just park along Roosevelt and then walk back. And then it creates a real bottleneck. That's a blind corner. You've got a right-hand corner and then a 45, and you can't see it. So you start stacking cars up on Roosevelt, which is in horrible condition anyway. That road needs to be redone. It's 20 years old. It's falling apart. And the other problem is on Hardy. I was out there for 2 hours yesterday taking pictures. I was also counting cars. I counted them at 1 minute intervals at random times, 5 minutes. The total effect was 1,300 cars an hour out there. And you can't pull out of the subdivision. You can't make a left turn. You got cars trying to come across Minton. You got cars trying to turn into our subdivision, turn out of our subdivision. You got people that pull out if they get a chance and they park in the suicide lane because they can't go up to the, they can't
We're
go
back to
baseline.
traffic again, yes?
That's
It's in
the
the interest of
critical
time.
factor here.
Okay, we
Traffic.
hear you, and if you just say you're concerned about the traffic, we hear you. Well, we've heard the same comments from many people. So in the interest of time, if you could keep it a little concise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. Okay, now I have Tom Buick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to make my points specific and not related to those you've already heard. I commend the applicant for extending the island on Roosevelt to prevent the right turn into the subdivision from the vacant lot proposed development. But as illustrated by this diagram here, Roosevelt pavement has completely failed. It's beyond crack sealing and slurry sealing over top of that. What ought to be required is reconstruction of Roosevelt. Now, they're taking an awful big bite out of the apple. They're asking for upzoning from residential to commercial. They're asking for 2 special use permits, and they're asking to be able to do a lot split. Now, that's a lot that they're putting on to the government. What is the government going to ask in return? My suggestion is that we ask them to do a traffic impact study that looks at the internal circulation of their site as well as the external traffic operations. The fact that 2 high commercial drive-throughs are not going to add a whole lot to the existing traffic, probably true. But what it does create is additional points of conflict. The dual left turns coming off of Kyrene, as well as the bus that was mentioned, has insufficient sight distance for anybody coming out of that driveway in the middle. And that driveway is only 23 feet. Cobblestone already has 3 driveways. This is adding a 4th one and then Roosevelt. Come on, you guys. This is a very dangerous situation. So I suggest that a traffic impact study be required of them. I suggest that there be off-site requirements and that that the repaving of Roosevelt be part of the requirements that go as part of this development.
All right, thank you, Mr. Buick. I have Sarah A. Mendeville, I think it is. She says, I have lived at the Casa Fiesta subdivision for 19 years, original owner. I am concerned with the safety of our neighborhood with the two businesses which developer wishes to build is too much traffic. Okay, we're still going, folks. Janice Beal says, I realize something will be built here, but it is accidents waiting to happen. Tony Cristinelli, I'm not sure, Cristinellis?
Cristinelli, yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Buick has already stated most of my comments.
Okay, thank you for your brevity. We still hear you. Janice Mundy says, the proposal for upzoning to 2 fast food restaurants will leave Casa Fiesta landlocked. It is dangerous.
I wish you
She's
had
gonna
a
get her 3
visual
minutes.
of the whole neighborhood. Because, yes, for this site plan, you figured how much you have traffic right around there to a certain extent. But the impact to us, because we have only one way, we are bounded by the canal and by Hardy and by Baseline, okay? So there's only one way on each end of the subdivision to get in and out. And we practically can't get in and out now because of the traffic. When they narrowed Hardy, here's some, can you see my pictures? This is what, let's see, this one is the traffic coming on Baseline in the morning around Kyrene. Oh, here we go. All right, so as the traffic comes off Kyrene, they come this way. Oh, let me get this over here. They come this way off of Kyrene, and then immediately you're going to have this 23-foot crossover place where people are trying to get out of their fast food restaurants, 2 of them with crossover traffic that's already been pointed out. And then this traffic moves very fast in the morning. There's also a bus stop right there. They go around the bus, and they're practically on top of the entrance to that fast food establishments before they know it, when they can't see around that bus at the bus stop. That's a public bus. We've had 20 injuries already there, the highest in all of Tempe. This is a terrible plan. As you pull into the restaurant, you have 2, on both sides, people can pull in and out of the 2 restaurants. What's happening is they'll dive in there trying to get off of Baseline and not get rear-ended, okay? And then when they get there, if anybody's pulling out, they've got to come to a quick stop, and anyone behind them, anytime there's an accident, boom, 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 back out to Baseline, we get the traffic. We already do. It cuts through, and people don't know the neighborhood and don't know that there's only one way in and out. And we've had problems with that already every time there's a pileup. And this is an invitation to a pileup. Are you starting to see that? And we have the same problem on the other end of our subdivision.
Ms. Mundy, can you begin to wrap it up, please? You're almost out of time.
Basically, we're becoming like landlocked in our own subdivision that we can't get in and out. Take a look at the traffic here. This is coming down. And here's an emergency vehicle that had to pull in where you have islands and pull into the middle because he couldn't get out because the traffic down Hardy is all the way down to University or even down to Rio Salado. Okay, and we were looking at possibility of double wide intersections, but
I'm afraid you're out of time.
that pretty much does it.
Okay.
We don't want to be prisoners in our own homes.
All right, thank you. So folks, at this point, I'm going to interject. This is reminding me more and more of a case we had, which was over on Baseline near the Fry's Electronics, where they wanted to put in a Burger King and a Fry's fuel station. And of course, people are very upset about how absolutely congested and jam-packed that road is, and how much worse it would be with a Burger King and a Fry's fuel stop there. And so we talked to the traffic engineer, who told us, well, nobody's going to go out of their way to go to these places when traffic is high. The only people who will go to these places are people for whom these things are basically on the way anyway. And in fact, their presence will lighten traffic a little bit because people will pull in for 5 to 20 minutes. And that's actually going to lighten the congestion a little bit. I'm not a traffic engineer. I can't tell you for sure if that's true. But I can tell you we do have a traffic engineering study which has looked at many of your concerns. And that engineering study says we're not going to see any significant increase in the number of cars. It's going to be what you already see, which I know is difficult. I live a similar situation where it's hard to pull out if I want to make a left turn. But let me just say, we've heard you, and the engineers have looked at it. So, with that, I think this is Diane Abe. And they say, I oppose any use permits for drive-through restaurants at 660 West Baseline. Please do not approve. Paul Abe says, I oppose use permits for any drive-through fast food or restaurants due to neighborhood traffic concerns which already exist. Please do not approve the use. Christine Pitsky, I think. The area vacant, let's see, I think it says the area vacant to Casa Fiesta would create a lot of traffic on Roosevelt and increase traffic to a busy Baseline Road. Drive-through exit onto Baseline Roosevelt. Noise already from the car wash increases the noise. Corinne Schwartz. Drive-throughs are not suitable for this location as it would cause too much traffic in Roosevelt on Roosevelt and Baseline in our neighborhood. Michelle Ditvick, I think. Oppose the rezoning to drive-throughs. Don Callender. No comments, just on record that he's attending this evening. Aren't you clever? Terry Sage. Are you here and still wish to speak?
I just want to first say thank you for your time. I appreciate you guys hearing our concerns. The landscaping that you guys are proposing for the lot, because I know at some point we will lose. Will it stay maintained so it doesn't obstruct viewing traffic if it does get approved?
There are standards that require maintenance of landscaping.
Okay, because you know how it is in some parking lots. Also, most all my questions and stuff were concerned on the traffic. I would like to look at solutions. I know we've talked about problems, but if this is approved, would you guys be willing to do appropriate signage, like maybe the right turn only or residential area only for going into our area, or maybe a speed bump at each entrance or something to deter people from cutting through there? Would that be maybe an option?
Appreciate your solutions-based approach. We can certainly discuss some of those.
I would just, yeah. And is there anything that would prevent these businesses from dumping in the canal like Cobblestone does?
Certainly. There's a lot that says you can't dump in the canals.
Okay, well, it happens all day long. Every day at Cobblestone, they dump into the canal. So just want to bring that up. And then also, if you guys could fix the traffic light at Hardy for the turn lights, that would make a big improvement to traffic over there, because you can't make a right or left from the turn signals because they just don't work. They work about 50% of the time, if that. So that's all I have.
Do you mean the manual, the pedestrian?
No, I'm talking about like if you're going eastbound on Baseline or westbound on Baseline to turn north or south, the turn lights don't always trigger.
Okay.
And when they do, they maybe get one car through, and people run the lights, and that's why there's so many accidents there. It causes a lot of backup.
I know if you send an email into the staff, they will be sure it gets to traffic engineering, and we can, that's a maintenance issue.
I asked at the last meeting, and nobody's done anything, so. But I would appreciate it.
We hear what you're saying, it needs to be said.
Yeah.
So if there's the maintenance, I think the city will step up.
Okay, I just wanted to talk solutions and on a good note.
All right,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Ms. Sage. All right, Miles A. Mundy says they don't desire this project. And I think this is a duplicate, Fidel Romero. What is to prevent patrons from parking on Roosevelt? Okay, last chance. Anyone else wish to speak? Seeing none, I will close the public comment. Thank you for your passion, for sharing your views with us. We do, believe it or not, consider these items. All right, so Ms. Sender, we'll invite you and your team to rebut or refute or comment on those comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the time. And appreciate your comments as well. You know, we've obviously looked into this quite extensively. We've been working with traffic for the city traffic engineer, Julian, for quite a while. We've had our traffic engineer look at it. The very, very positive review from the city that this is a condition that is very similar to every other business on Baseline. We're not creating anything new here. There is no condition that we're creating that's unique. We're trying to actually help a little bit. So a lot of projects can just be developed without zoning, and they don't have to put a median in. They don't have to change the driveways. So what we do is we're making it a better and safer condition to make sure that it's a left turn only out of onto Roosevelt and not a right turn only out onto Roosevelt. And we have talked about a right turn only or left turn only sign. A left turn only sign onto Roosevelt as well, in addition to the median. So, you know, we appreciate your comments too about the capturing of the traffic. And that's really what a lot of these restaurants are. They are placed strategically to capture traffic. They know what is an appropriate location. So whether it's the Taco Bell or it's a Starbucks or it's a healthy restaurant, capturing the traffic here takes traffic off of the street that otherwise is traveling by anyway and goes to the restaurant. Again, just to follow up, we are doing a much, much reduced development proposed here than what could be allowed under the CSS zoning. The traffic impact is minimal. It could be much larger. The parking field could be much larger. The traffic impact could be much larger. A lot of the things could be much more intense. I'm trying to go through the comments here, sorry. I think we hit on a lot of them already, capturing the traffic, and also that, you know, there won't be any parking on Roosevelt. That's something that the buildings are just literally too far away for people to want to walk across the pavement for that. So, you know, that's something that we don't feel is really going to happen, but is a valid concern to bring up. And we do believe the neighborhood here has some valid concerns. We realize that they've recently gotten a grant for their retention basin to the north there, north of our property, to add some irrigation. So they have a grant from the city to add some irrigation lines to that retention basin. So we realize that they want to beautify the community and beautify things, and maybe a grant for their street paving, or talking to someone about this. Well, it's a city street, so I guess the city would do that. So the city maybe should take a look at that if it is a problem for the neighborhood. Same thing with Hardy, those lights. You know, maybe somebody can look into those as well. Again, those aren't impacted by our project, but we certainly feel for the neighborhood on those issues. Unfortunately, those are outside the scope of what we're here today. Again, this driveway configuration, the layout of the site plan, everything on this property is very typical for a similar site in a similar location, whether it's on Broadway, Baseline, Southern, Guadalupe, wherever it's at. It's a very typical configuration for this type of building, and we would be fine with a right turn only. A left turn only on Roosevelt, but we believe that we should have full turning movements on Baseline. There is adequate traffic. What do you call it? The timing between traffic lights is adequate there to allow the left turns onto Baseline, eastbound turns on the Baseline. We feel that there is adequate traffic flow. Baseline traffic counts have gone down in the last few years. We feel there's adequate timing there. We feel there's adequate ability to turn both left and right, eastbound and westbound on Baseline. And that's something that the city's traffic engineer and our traffic engineers have obviously certified as well. So with that, if you have any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions? Commissioner Brown?
Ms. Senator, on one of your diagrams, you showed layers of buffering, but I don't think you actually called for, I mean, I don't think you listed, and I always want to clarify, does your design include, or your team design, include a block wall on the property line, the north property line?
There's a requirement, yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Brown, there's a requirement for a 3-foot block wall just beyond where the car parks, yes.
Between this property and the retention basin?
Yes.
3 feet?
Well, there's a wall, there's a 6-foot wall
6 foot.
on the boundary, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
that's
yes,
how I
yes.
wanted to
So
clarify
there's
that exists.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Thornton?
Just real quick, Ms. Cinder, is anybody here from Cobblestone with you tonight? Because the things I've heard from our neighbors about what Cobblestone is doing is very disturbing to me. And I don't know what we can, I mean, I'm speaking now, but I mean, for the future, somebody needs to talk to Cobblestone, or the police need to be called, or I don't know what needs to happen, but I'm very concerned about what they're reporting that Cobblestone is doing in their neighborhood. Even the smoking, you know, going back and using their park for other purposes and smoking pot and stuff. And yeah, so that's very concerning to me, and you're helping them out in this situation, so perhaps you
We'll
or
certainly
somebody.
talk to them and look into those issues and see, you know, what's really happening back there, and we'll definitely talk to them. That's certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to figure out what type of accountability we can come up with. Like, I'd like a future report on this, because that's very disturbing to me. Thank you.
Vice Chair DiDomenico?
I will say that having, rather than a vacant lot, having 2 operating businesses with customers and at least operations till 10 o'clock may help to curtail some of the Cobblestone activities, at least as far as trash and noise and smoking. So I kind of missed your response to the parking on Roosevelt. I mean, my experience tells me that what prevents people, there is no prohibition against parking on Roosevelt. What prevents people from doing it is our innate laziness. You know, we don't tend to park off-site and walk onto a site to buy a hamburger or a cup of coffee. And then the fact that you can't walk up to the drive-thrus, and these restaurants seem to be designed to take advantage of people's desire to never leave their car. So I'm guessing that getting out, parking on Roosevelt and walking inside the restaurant probably wouldn't happen too often. That's it.
No other questions? Thank you, Ms. Sender.
Thank you very much.
All right, so again, in this new tradition which I am attempting to form, if you will continue to indulge me, Ms. Kaminsky, would you reframe the issue for us before we do our discussion?
The request before you is for the rezoning of the property from trailer park to commercial shopping and service, for 2 use permits for drive-throughs that would be on 2 separate lots for restaurant use, and for the development plan review for the building elevations, materials, colors, site plan layout, and landscape. I do want to clarify, however, that there is a code requirement on the north side of the property that it be an 8-foot CMU wall, because it's a buffer requirement adjacent to single-family residential or use. So that would be an 8-foot wall with the 6-foot landscape buffer with trees planted 1 for every 20 feet on center along that northern perimeter. We can also look at the little remnant piece that's part of the Cobblestone, because as a commercial development, they should also have that buffer. There should be no physical communication between the lot to the north and the Cobblestone site, and there should be trees along that northern perimeter. So we can look into that as well.
Okay, so do we have the 8-foot wall already as the part of the conditions?
It's one of the code requirements. So they don't have it called out on their plans, but it is one of the things that would be looked at when they come in through plan check.
Gotcha, it's already in the process. Okay. All right, so commissioners, what do you think? What are your thoughts? Commissioner Amorosi.
I'll start it off. I live in a similar area that's bordered by things that where you can't get out. We only have 2 exits in our neighborhood. So I hear the neighbors, what they're going through. This area seems like a nightmare. And I think adding 2 auto-centric businesses, even though they say it's minimal, it's still added. And when you keep adding and adding, that troubles me. So I'm going to side with the neighborhood here and vote against the use permit for 2 drive-throughs.
Okay, other comments? Commissioner Brown.
I also recalled the case at Baseline and the land west of the freeway. And I recall there were a lot of neighbors who did not want any more intensification, but when it came down to the fact that they already had a difficult and very congested area, the additional traffic by those uses was a rather small percentage. And based on the number of accidents that are being cited and the problems that people are already expressing, I think that that's endemic to just the number of people in this square mile. One of the people suggested we look at the overall, so I pulled up my phone and looked at the an aerial photograph beyond this image on the screen. And there are just a lot of dwellings. This is one of the few open spaces left for development. So as difficult as it is to think about 2 more, I'm going to guess that it's part of a bigger problem, and that this is not really the straw that broke the camel's back, but just one more straw stacked on a large bale.
Okay. Commissioner Sumner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're looking at a lot of different approvals here tonight, or considerations. I've got no problem with the zoning, absolutely makes sense. As it relates to the development plan, most of it's fine, don't see a problem. A lot of landscape, that's great. A lot of high walls to protect from noise, that's great too. The issue that hangs me up is the use permits. I mean, there was a process before. Someone came in and proposed, and they heard loud and clear from the neighborhood that they didn't want traffic in the neighborhood, and the biggest concern they had was drive-throughs. And so what do we have now? You're coming back with 2 drive-throughs, and so I can't reconcile that in my mind. That said, so I'll have a hard time supporting anything here tonight on this site. That said, development's not going to go away. Opportunities are not going to go away. Somebody else is going to come to this site and is going to want to develop it. So I don't know what the long-term solution is, Terry, in the spirit of solutions. But there's a few things we should look into with the city as opportunities here. I know private streets are expensive, but there might be some other things that we could explore with city staff that might solve the long-term issue here. Thanks.
All right, any other thoughts? Commissioner Johnson, did I see a hand?
One thing I heard tonight is we get the traffic, we already do, and it was pretty emphatic that that is the case. And I'll echo that this is very similar to what happened over on Baseline and in front of Fry's. And I agree with Commissioner Brown. I would also say that I would have safety concerns with that site with ingress and egress if the exit and entrance on Roosevelt were removed from this. It wasn't really discussed a lot tonight, which I thought it would be for, but I don't see how that would impact safety to some extent, but also I don't think how that would prevent northbound traffic, vehicles that want to go northbound. I don't see how that would prevent them from just coming off of Baseline at any rate. I think having amenities closer to the neighborhood and closer to residents makes that a more walkable, bikeable location for them to visit. So perhaps they're not going out into their cars and driving to go get a meal or go get their coffee in the morning, their Starbucks. I will be supporting this tonight.
Vice Chair DiDomenico.
I concur with a lot of what Commissioner Johnson has just said. My background is commercial real estate. I firmly believe that property owners have a right to develop property that they own in accordance with the general plan that's gone through our city's public process. So if there is an undeveloped parcel, oftentimes in these hearings, the neighborhoods feel the highest and best use would be a park or something without development that creates no traffic demands and no noise and what have you. But we would all feel differently if we owned that property, and we would feel that we would have some right to put something on it that's in accordance with the general plan. In this case, they're asking for a zoning change to take it from a trailer park, which is its current zoning designation, to commercial shopping center, which matches what our general plan calls for in that area. That's what our city has said we should have there. Now it's just a matter of, is it a big office building? Is it, medical office? Is it, something else that fits in that zoning category? If I was a developer, I wouldn't touch this site with a 10-foot pole because I drive baseline eastbound from downtown Phoenix and try and get to that stoplight to take a right on Kyrene on a regular basis, and it is horrible. I think that what ultimately may happen to businesses that would open in this site would be that customers will feel the same frustration that the neighborhood feels getting in and out of that site, and it may quickly get that reputation of being just way too hard to get your cup of coffee, and you may just want to go somewhere else where you don't have to put up with this. So, I think it's the best design that, and there's a lot of compromise involved here. We've got traffic studies that say that it won't significantly add to the impact, which is already bad in the neighborhood. Frankly, what would help the site is if they created more of an entrance and exit off of Roosevelt, but that's in conflict with what the neighborhood wants. But if you don't want to have a lot of people trying to take a turn in that main entrance that they've designed, you create another place for them to get in and out of the project, and that's on Roosevelt, but it's a trade-off. So I support the owner's ability to develop something here. I think that what they presented us is not a horrible option. I personally wouldn't do it, but that doesn't stop me from supporting their ability to try.
Thank you. Commissioner Thornton, do you wish to chime in?
Thank you. It's nice to go after you, Commissioner DiDomenico. I don't have to say that much. So this project does meet all the criteria for me that I have to follow as a commissioner up here this evening. I've lived in Tempe for 52 years, and I've been down Baseline many times, and I avoid it at all costs. I just hate Baseline Road, especially between Kyrene and the freeway. But I also believe that the people who own this property have a right to develop it, and they have met all the criteria needed in order to do that. But I also want to say that I have a lot of concerns that were brought up this evening. I've already mentioned the cobblestone, but Mr. Buick, you need to call Don Bessler tomorrow, and you need to tell him, and all the rest of y'all in that neighborhood need to tell him that's ridiculous that has not been repaved in 20 years. That street looks terrible, and it shouldn't look like that. That's embarrassing. Call your council members too, because they need to know about that. That's ridiculous. I like the suggestions from the compromiser lady, and I'm sorry I didn't get your name down, but with the speed bumps and the sign that says this is a residential area, I mean, I do think there's other things we could do to help mitigate the problems that you're having, short of a traffic light to turn left out of there, which would be what I would want if I lived in that neighborhood. there's got to be some other things we can help them out with, because they are trapped. They're landlocked and trapped in their own community. But that's happening to you now. So anyways, with all that being said, I am in support of this project.
Okay, so I'm going to thank all our commissioners for their comments, and I will keep mine relatively brief, I think. I live not that far from this site. I still run the canal sometimes, go past the car wash and all that. Getting out of my feeder street onto Priest, I can do okay if I make a right turn during rush hour, but there's no chance I will make a left during rush hour at all. I have tried. It is just a no-go. And if someone were to come and try and add additional business, you know, just to the side of where I'm trying to make my turn, well, if it made it a little worse, I'm still not making a left. I feel that we have two choices in the long run with this property. Either we try and make sure nothing ever goes there, or we try to encourage something that we think is acceptable. And I think this is acceptable. It's a large amount of parking, a good deal of landscape, and I emphasize the parking because that means cars will fill that. And those cars are going to come from people I believe are already on that traffic. Nobody wants to drive baseline during hard traffic if they don't have to. We all know that. We all know that. We've heard that. So I don't think you're going to get people that say, hey, I'm going to go to Starbucks during rush hour, which is out of my way. I think it'll be people that are already on that road, and they'll take a detour, so they're going to diffuse a little bit, and that's actually, I think, going to help the situation a little. In any case, if nothing goes there, it's still going to be a nightmare trying to make a left on baseline, and I'm afraid that just goes with these high traffic areas that we try to pull out on. In any case, I think of the things that could be developed there, this is a good one in terms of traffic, and it's a good one in terms of business. Starbucks has a great clientele, and if we get a healthy restaurant, that's great too. So I'm in favor of the project. So, having said that, there are a couple potential conditions we might put on an approval. We could also vote to deny. I will be happy to entertain any motions either direction.
I'm just trying to remember, did we come up with any of the conditions of approval that we had errors, mistakes, or changes to make as a part of any action?
We did say that hours of operation would be until 10 p.m.
And we feel that it's properly reflected in the...
Chair and Vice Chair, yes. The condition of approval does reflect up to 10 p.m. It was in the staff report there was, so the condition of approval should
So the condition does not need to be amended. It's already...
Correct.
Did we add, is the applicant okay with the conditions, all the conditions of approval as written in the staff report? Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
I guess I'll make a motion then. I move for the approval. Where is it? Sorry, can't see it here. Of PL 180172, zoning map amendment, 2 use permits, and the development plan review.
A second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Johnson and a second from Vice Chair Thornton. I would ask, before we take a vote, Commissioner Johnson, would you consider amending your motion to include that the applicant will work with city staff to implement such measures as an extended median, no right turn sign, or others actions that are found to be suitable at the Roosevelt site?
As a condition or as a suggestion?
As a condition of approval, that they work with staff on that.
You have specific, you want to, is it okay the way that he stated it, or shall I restate that?
Yes, we can just incorporate that in the motion in the minutes as amended, if you just would be okay with that.
So moved.
Okay, so I've forced a little, I've did a little arm twisting here, and Commissioner Johnson is willing to amend his motion. Commissioner Thornton as seconded. So all those in favor of approval with the condition that they work with staff regarding the right turn at Roosevelt, signal by show of hands, please. And I see 5 of us in favor and those opposed. I see 2, so the motion passes 5-2. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience and your involvement.
Just for just a second, we've got a lot of people that were here, and what date would this be advertised and move? Yeah. Just for the public's information, this particular case now moves from our body.
This is scheduled for the council on August 30th, and the final hearing would be September 27th.
So what happens now is we've moved this forward to the city council with a recommendation for approval on a 5-2 vote. You still have time to ask questions of staff and of the applicant, make suggestions for how to solve some of these problems, or come up with compromise, and ultimately on the 2 dates that staff just read to you and I didn't write them down to remember, but the dates of the first hearing.
The first hearing is August 30th, and that's for the zoning map amendment and the final subdivision plat, and then September 27th for the second hearing.
So September 22nd would be the second hearing, also again at the council meeting. So if you have interest in attending those, participating in them, or just emailing to the city council, those are the dates to worry about. This location, but those are on those dates, which are Thursday nights. Thanks for your participation.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to take a 2-minute break. We've got a commissioner down. We'll be back in just a moment. Make yourselves comfortable. All right, we are going to reconvene, get back to the business at hand. So, thank you for your patience, everyone. Our next item on the agenda is Garcia residence. Yes, Mr. Guerra.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Dalton Guerra, Planner 1, City of Tempe Planning Division. The Garcia residence is located on Lot 174 of the Hughes Acres Unit 2 subdivision, located south of East Broadway Road and east of South Rural Road in the R1-6 single-family residential district. On June 19, 2018, the hearing officer denied the applicant's request to park a recreational vehicle in the required front yard setback. Denial was based on the proposal not meeting 2 of the 5 use permit criteria, one being the contribution to the deterioration of the neighborhood and downgrading of property values, 2, not being compatible with existing surrounding structures and uses. The use permit application was the result of a code violation issued by the Code Compliance Division on May 10, 2018 for parking a recreational vehicle in the front yard setback. Per the Zoning and Development Code, Section 4-602, recreational vehicles exceeding 21 feet in length shall not be parked in the front yard setback except for periods up to 48 hours within 7 consecutive days for cleaning, loading, and maintenance. Prior to the June 19th hearing officer meeting, staff received 2 calls and 1 email in opposition, as well as 1 call in support. At the June 19th hearing, 2 members of the neighborhood spoke in support. Since the June 19th hearing, staff has received 2 calls in opposition and 1 call in support. The callers in opposition were mainly concerned with setting precedents in the neighborhood for other RVs to be parked in the front yard setback, preserving the aesthetics of the neighborhood, and concerns with encroachment into the right-of-way. In the staff report, this aerial photo is not included, but I have it here on the slideshow. That gives further clarification on the dimensions, you could say, for the RV and how it encroaches into the right-of-way. I'm here if you have any questions.
Questions for Mr. Guerra? Commissioner Johnson.
I do have a question, and I apologize for not knowing this ahead of time, but does this use permit convey if the property is sold?
Could you clarify that for me?
If the owner of the property decides to sell this property, does that use permit remain with that property?
Correct. It would need to be transferred in the event that somebody else wants to also park their RV, a separate RV in the front yard setback.
So the new owner would need
It
to come?
requires a use permit transfer.
A use permit transfer.
For the ownership, change in ownership will require that.
Okay.
Is that a similar process to getting the use permit?
It's an administrative process.
It doesn't come back before our body.
Correct. It would also need to be parked in the exact same spot that the previous use permit was approved for. If there's any change in the design or the proposed use, then it won't be valid for a use permit transfer. It will have to be a brand new use permit application.
Thank you.
Okay, more questions? Thank you, Mr. Guerra.
Thank you.
Well done. All right, so we will now ask our appellant to come to the stand and to the podium there, and if you want to state your case, we'd be happy to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Patrick Garcia. I am the owner of the residence, have been such for 23 years. Had the RV for probably 9 to 10 years. It's been in that exact spot for that long. And we're here because of a neighbor dispute between one of my neighbors and another neighbor down the street referenced their dogs. And that other neighbor had a trailer on his yard, I guess, or in his driveway. Not an RV parking, but in his driveway. And in turn, he complained on that person. And even though zoning said that they only work on the complaints at hand, it appears that they went beyond that and started to cite others, unless the complaint was unspecific. But I have since talked to that person, the guy that actually complained, and he equivocally denies that he complained on my residence. And I have every reason.
Garcia, I think I can save you a little time. How we got here is not going to change things as much as if you tell us why you think it's reasonable for you to have the use permit.
Well, do I have to go over the initial stuff or just the secondary stuff? Because I guess the secondary appeal was going over some of the questions, and I think that was the lack of compatibility and the, the downgrade of the neighborhood. And in my rebuttal letter, I went through, and I just drove through my own neighborhood, and I found 22 other such, I guess, incompatibilities in their yards. Even looking at, I guess it's the vice mayor, who had a boat in front of theirs that lives within my neighborhood. And then as far as the value of the homes, the values have gone up. I think we're in another bubble now. The house next to me, one that's been a frat house on and off and on and off for the last 7 years, they're asking $3,900 a month to rent the house. So that's very significant. I don't know if any of you can pay that much, but I know I can't. So that the property values go down, that's just not the case. In fact, they're going up. Another reason for, obviously, I think you've heard that my house was built in 1963, okay, and it was built for an RV to park in that section. It was built that way. I bought it for that exact fact that it had RV parking. Now, obviously, we're in 2018. I bought this thing back in, like, I want to say 07, maybe 05, 07, probably 07, 08. So the trailers have gotten taller, and I can't park this thing all the way back because the overhang of my house, I have to cut away about 6 feet by 3 feet, 3 feet in and 6 feet back just to get it past the overhang, because it's a partially pitched roof. So it doesn't go completely up like this, so the pitch obviously stays longer or stays farther down. So I have to go, like I said, like 6 feet in just to be able to get it back in that section. And then even if I get it back, it may actually hit the downgrade, and then I'd have to deal with that as well. Because it's not just the height of the trailer, but it's the AC unit that's on top and everything. Because I think somebody said they went by the house, and it's about a 7-foot opening, and I have to, I can't, if anybody's never backed the trailer in, it's quite an ordeal to just try and back it in. Then if you try and back it in and squeeze it all the way back without hitting a wall, without hitting the house, you want a little bit of play. It won't fit. And outside of that is just basically getting rid of it. And I'm not a rich individual, public servant like yourself, and a single income. I have 4 kids, stay-at-home wife. So I got a deal on that several years ago, and it fit everything that I needed at the time for hunting, for camping, for outing with my kids. And so, it costs to get rid of things. It costs, to store it. And somebody suggested putting it in the back, but with the alley, the can't, even if I put a gate back there, that couldn't get it into the can't of that alley, just because it'd be almost impossible. Let's see. I just wanted to go over a few other points. The fact that I actually got a few more, I went through and kind of did a petition on my street. Actually got a letter from somebody that lives in my neighborhood that's a realtor, and he gave a letter for me. Sorry. And I actually went to 18 residents, well, 19 residents in my neighborhood, all in favor with the exception of one. And it was an elderly lady that thought that it was in reference parking things on the street. And even one of the signatures is with the original complainant, who said he was in favor, along with the neighborhood association president, who signed my signed my petition in favor of. I have copies of those. There was, again, going back to that value, or the value of the homes. I mean, I think I had addressed it in my rebuttal letter that I think there was a city, what was it, a city manager or some kind of city manager that had purchased their home recently in my neighborhood. Let's see. Actually, even I think the city manager has something similar across the street from him. Has an RV in front of their driveway. The vice mayor has another. I just went by today. They have a trailer parked in front of their house across the street from them. They have a trailer parked in front of their house. So I mean, going to the thing of that we're going to have this explosion of people going out and buying trailers just because one person gets a permit is kind of silly. I've had to go. I've already dumped over $1,000 in just fees just to be here.
So if I may, tell me if this is accurate. You're saying that there are other similar conditions in the neighborhood,
Yes.
so it's not unusual, and it doesn't drag the values of the property down. Is that about right?
Correct, but their verbiage is compatibility. Obviously, that's what they're saying.
Let me, if I may, let's have Commissioner Thornton ask a question. Is that all right?
Sure.
Hi. So looking at this picture that you have up, is that a truck behind?
Yes, it is.
Is there a wall between the truck and the trailer?
There's a. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I mean, how did you get that truck in there?
There's a gate.
Okay, so why? I mean, I don't know how much room that would save you and if it would make much of a difference, but why don't you turn the whole thing around and have the flatbed part facing inwards, because then you would have more space to get.
The
I
thing's
know,
about
but
70,
that's a truck right there. I know where the hitch is.
because the
It's right
trailer is
there.
about 7,800 pounds, and there's no way to
But
move
you
it.
have a truck there.
How
did the truck get there?
The truck was driven in it, but that's not the one that pulls it. I kind of think
Well,
I
I
know
mean,
where you might be
I
going
was
with that.
looking at this picture that,
Right.
And seeing how much space there was in that flatbed part, and thinking that if you turned your whole thing around and faced it the other way, then you would save a lot of space, because the thing that's the problem is how high your travel trailer is, and the other end doesn't have
Right.
that height.
Because it's a possibility, but I don't know if even that would meet the requirement. I would have to go out and measure that, so I don't know if even that would meet the requirement before it hit the front of that trailer.
Would this fit on the side if it weren't for the overhang of your roof?
Correct.
Thank you.
So let's see.
So I think we probably have the gist of where you're coming from. In the interest of time, if you've got other points to raise, by all means.
Let's see. Well, I do have one. That obviously, that even the mayor of Tempe has said that families are a big thing. That they want to have families living in Tempe. Obviously, I've been here for 23 years. I'm still raising a family there. I would like to remain there, but obviously not I think I've made this point the last time. I mean, I might have to look at moving out of Tempe or, you know, trying to find someplace else to live if I have to entirely change the way I'm going to raise my kids because I don't have that trailer anymore because I have to get rid of it. But going on that point, obviously in an election year, I would think families would be an important subject. A vote no sends a signal that we do not care about families and their engagement with our state to spend money in our state by using our forests and national parks and lakes, which give back to our own state and community. I'm an advocate hunter. I take my children out camping, fishing all the time. I use that trailer minimal 3 or 4 times a year. You know, it's constantly moving. It's not stationary. I don't let it, I try to keep it in, you know, good repair, running. And also, going back to the point that I've been dealing with a frat house next to me for the last 7 years. And I recently installed cameras because I think that's what's going to happen again, because nobody in the right mind can spend $3,900 on a home of that size. And that's going to happen because that's what he's gearing that place up for. And this trailer actually helps me as a barrier with those kids in that U-shaped parking lot from encroaching on my house and from the noise because they all hang out in their driveways. I've had the paddy wagons there before. I've had gangster parties there. I've had all kinds of issues with the kids. And that's kind of a barrier for me. On top of that, I mean, I've had to you know, go to the fact of putting my own trucks in front of parked in front of my own home to keep the kids from leaving their cars in front of my house, parking in front of my house, leaving them there for weeks and months, which they've done, and it's just a pain. So I'm just trying to create, again, I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to raise a family. I'm trying to remain there. I want to remain here. I like Tempe. You know, it's a great place. My kids can bike to school. We can still walk around, you know, walk our dogs, walk our kids around, use the park. You know, like I said, I've been in public safety for 28 years, and Tempe is still one of the safest areas in the valley. You know, I help out Tempe on quite a few occasions. So all I'm asking is for you guys to look at this with a little bit of common sense and a little bit of empathy. And I'm not asking to build anything. I'm not trying to add anything.
Okay, I think we've got you.
Yeah, so
let's call it there. I think we've heard your points.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Mr. Garcia?
No, actually,
Commissioner Summit.
Not for Mr. Garcia, for staff.
Oh,
and I thought I heard a comment earlier that the part of that thing was on the sidewalk. It is not on the sidewalk. If you look at the photos.
Are you talking about your hitch?
Yeah.
Oh, it definitely is on the sidewalk. I took a picture of it today.
I did too. Because if you look at the little seam of the sidewalk.
I stood over it.
You stood over it?
I
Okay,
did.
I don't believe it is, but I thought I'd pushed it far enough back. Little thingamabob there. I got a recent photo.
That hangs over for sure.
It's hard.
I don't know if you can see that, but obviously you see the seam of the sidewalk.
Well, the question here isn't encroachment over the seam of the sidewalk, though. It's what's the really
I'm not blocking the sidewalk.
No, the line of delineation is what point? Is it the property line? Is it the easement?
I think they said it was the front or the.
Based on the Maricopa County Assessor website that we see here, that blue outline is the property line. So the front yard setback starts at that blue line and going towards the house. Would be
What
what
is
we
the setback again?
That's what we consider the front yard setback.
How many
Is it the
feet
20-foot
is that?
setback?
25, 24, R16.
And just kind of going to that, obviously, like I told you, I bought the house with the
20 feet. 20 feet for the front yard setback.
I don't live in an HOA. And when you purchase a house, it doesn't say you can't use your property to park items on it. Obviously, you're not going to park it in your yard. You're not going to park it in places, you know, where they don't belong. This house came with the RV parking. Like I said, that's why I purchased it. Nothing was ever sent to me by zoning saying you can't park anything there.
Okay, we got you.
Right.
We got you.
So.
Can I ask one more quick question, though? You did say you'd been parking this or similar
This,
for
I've had it
9
since
years?
about 07, yeah.
That's a long time to have something parked without the city saying anything. Is there any precedent for that?
If you're referring to being grandfathered in that case, the RV/trailer would have to have stayed in the same exact spot since it was first parked there. It can't move to be grandfathered in. Does that make sense?
I got it, right, okay.
Okay, question for staff, right? Sorry, Commissioner Sumner.
Thank you. Question for staff, because I think we have two issues at play here. There's a lot of discussion about parking within the setback, and the setback goes 20 feet toward the house. We've also got an issue, though, if I see this right, and if your photo is right, that there's actually parking in the right-of-way. So do we have a way that someone can park a trailer long-term in the public right-of-way or an RV? Is there even a mechanism to do that?
Not on the public right-of-way.
And I guess I see that that's what we have here. So we're talking about the right-of-way, but it goes beyond the right-of-way. There's a bigger issue.
Right. And just to remind the commissioner, the commission tonight, the decision or the consideration in front of you is, did the hearing officer make the right decision? That's the appeal of the decision of the hearing officer. So did the hearing officer utilize the use permit criteria in the decision-making process? That's what you are here to consider.
Okay, so
I think at that time she didn't know whether or not what rights she had to give permission to.
well, we're gonna hold off on
setback.
discussion on that because that doesn't get us anywhere. That's getting into weeds that don't help us.
To
So-
clarify, I think the hearing officer had said that, and Dalton, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that she doesn't have the authority to allow something on the right of way, and she doesn't know if she has any authority to approve something on the right of way. That was the
Right-of-way?
I don't know answer to what she had said at the time, not to the use permit, per se. It's parking in the right of way.
Okay, so in other words, she's saying even if she granted the use permit, it still doesn't cover this case because it's in the right-of-way. All right, Mr. Garcia, we'll thank you.
Can you guys
and
clarify the right-of-way?
We'll ask you to relinquish the podium.
Property line, which is the blue line.
The property line or onto the sidewalk? I'm not following. Okay, so and again, going back to what on the common layperson's appearance is within your property, correct?
Now, the right-of-way is on your property.
Right. And I think I just wanted to mention that obviously it's a mobile item. That right-of-way has never had to be accessed. There's nothing of value under it, and if need be, I could always move it. And if you guys grant a permit, obviously, there's always, I know the city has the option to always, pull it back or revisit it. So I don't think by granting it, it's not like a permanent, you can never revisit the thing again. Just saying, I mean, I know how
Okay.
public things work.
Let me stop you there. We've still got another case to do after this, and I think we've got all the basic facts in front of us here that we now need to discuss. So we'll thank you and ask you to take your seat, Mr. Garcia.
Just that my daughter wanted to say something.
We can do that during the public comment section, yes. All right, so fair enough. That brings us to public comment section. So Ms. Garcia, if you would like to say something, you're welcome to. Your dad can help you with the form after the fact.
It would be kind if you guys can. It would be kind if you guys can leave our trailer there so we can still go camping, and for my brothers and my dad could go hunting, and for us to go fishing still, and for us to have our have going travel with that.
Okay. Thank you. Well done. Thanks for being part of the process. All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this case? By the way, we do actually need you to fill out a card, if you would. Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close the public comment section. All right. So now we discuss this. So I actually would like to ask a question of staff because I am a little confused here. So we are here to decide if the hearing officer correctly applied the criteria. And if we were to say, no, we don't think that she did, we think that the 5 criteria are adequately met, what effect would that have? He still would not have the ability to park that trailer there, correct?
That's correct.
Mr. LeVake.
Commissioner, if I could provide some point of clarity. So the effect of allowing the use permit, use of the driveway for RV parking would grant the use of the driveway. There is a portion that is in the right of way, but as long as that trailer does not obstruct the sidewalk, then that condition may remain. Similar to how you may have a house that you park in your driveway, but it's not necessarily it's an RV or a trailer. There are limitations currently in the code on parking RVs and trailers that are not allowed to be in the front yard. And so we have a process that you have to apply for a use permit if you want to seek that granting. Now, you may have trailers or vehicles that might encroach slightly into that area, but it cannot obstruct the sidewalk pathway. So if there's any obstruction, that portion of the trailer will need to be removed as a result of affecting the sidewalk pathway.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. LeVake. I would like to clarify that also because now I'm turned around a little bit. Is the defining line the saw cut of the sidewalk? Is it the right-of-way? Is it the setback? What's the line that can't be crossed even with a permit?
That would be the sidewalk path, the cut line.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you. All right. So it sounds to me like if we were to grant the appeal, overturn the hearing officer's decision, therefore allowing the permit, and he got his trailer to not encroach on the sidewalk, he would be okay. Okay, I'm not hearing anyone tell me I'm wrong. So, what do we think, commissioners? Commissioner Thornton.
I'll start this time. Thank you, Mr. Garcia, for coming today and for your daughter also and joining us in the process. I grew up in this neighborhood. I grew up just around the corner on Terrace Road, and I drove through it today and looked at the property. You do encroach onto the public right-of-way, and you will have to have that portion. It's only like a couple of inches. You are. But I feel like his efforts going out to the neighbors, getting the signatures of approval from his neighbors, there's no HOA in this area. He bought the house for the purposes of using the RV, and this neighborhood's kind of like that. It's not, there's no HOA, so there's nobody bossing everybody around, and I feel like I am going to vote to overturn the hearing officer's decision based on him moving that back off of the right-of-way, the public right-of-way. I just think he should be able to continue using it. Whether it's sat in the same spot for 9 years, not being moved, that's ridiculous. It's an RV, but it's been there for 9 years, and he's never had a problem until now. I just think it would be a shame to take it away. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Commissioner Amorosi.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I liked Commissioner Thornton's original idea where all you have to do is move your gate to the rear of your house, flip your trailer around so that the lower back trailer goes under your eave, and you would easily be able to fit the trailer and everything back behind the right-of-way and the sidewalk. I do worry about that with ADA compliance if someone moves in that needs that full sidewalk. And I think her solution is very simple. Moving a gate to the rear of the house would be easy.
Other comments? I'll jump in. All right. I kind of like what you're doing with the flipping the thing around, except I don't know that I don't know that the RV has a hitch on the other end that you can use to push it in the other way, right? That's the bumper, and well, how does it work? I don't know. I don't know if 180 degrees, but the end that's on the street is the end that you grab a hold of to tow it.
Correct. So he'd have to have the truck.
So that truck can never leave.
Yeah,
So, but that's not the towing truck. He'd have to use a good truck to pull it in, and then that truck can't be used until you... Anyway, I guess I'm saying, I don't know, it's interesting, but let me just back up. I don't see this as a problem. I looked through the neighborhood too. I didn't see 22 vehicles, but I did see landscaping trucks parked on the street and RVs and a bunch of other stuff that's not supposed to be there. And I feel like it's kind of part of the neighborhood. There's no HOA. This does not look like a problem vehicle to me. It looks like it's pretty well maintained, and I believe that it is used for a good purpose. You know, if it can, you know, be nudged so it's not over the sidewalk, I have no problem supporting it. Okay, that's me. Other thoughts? Let's do Commissioner Brown, and then we'll...
I think there's a problem having vehicles out in the public right-of-way. If it's possible to reconfigure things, that's great, but I think he's had time to do that. And I don't know if that front trailer part can be, that's an alteration. I guess that would be costly to have a re-weld or detached hitch or something going on there. But I think it's a safety hazard for kids on the sidewalk if you hit that piece of steel. We've all walked into trailer hitches just in parking lots, and it hurts. So I'm afraid I can't support this much intrusion. It's not a good thing.
Okay. Commissioner Sumner.
Thank you. If we were just talking about authorization to use, to park within the setback, I think I would have a harder time with this. But this is, I mean, I know we're focused on whether or not the hearing officer made the right decision, but I'm compelled to actually, in plain terms, try to understand this and articulate my position. So this is essentially parking your property, the RV outside your property. It's beyond your property line. And I think that just sets a dangerous precedent, and I can't support it.
I actually would quickly like to rebut. In my sort of scoping through the neighborhood and surrounding streets, I saw quite a few landscaping trucks and trailers and so on parked on the street, at which, I mean, to me, this is an improvement on that condition. For what it's worth.
Sure. And I've got no problem with landscaping trucks on the street at all. This is a long-term parking that you can't park an RV on the street long-term in the city, period. So I have a hard time granting a special case for this to be able to park here. It's no different in my mind.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. I understand and I empathize with the emotional appeal of this. It's something that I think a lot of people identify with, and going out camping and doing things like that. But simply looking at what we're here today to do, I don't find fault in what the previous decision that was made, and I don't see that there is a compelling reason that they made a mistake in the decision that they made. So I'm not going to support this tonight.
Okay. Just chime in?
Ditto. That's exactly, I don't see the compelling legal basis to overturn the hearing officer's decision, and that's what we're asked to do. I'm all for the applicant trying to find a way to shoehorn that thing or reconfigure or find a way as inexpensively as possible to fit within the city's ordinance, but we're asked to determine whether or not the hearing officer made a mistake or improperly interpreted the facts, and I haven't been given evidence of.
Fair enough. So we've all chimed in here. I will entertain a motion. Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I make a motion to uphold the hearing officer's decision to deny the use permit for the Garcia residence PL 180159.
Point of order, I think we have to make that motion as deny the appeal.
Deny the appeal. Okay. I make a motion that we deny the appeal of the Garcia residence PL 180159.
Thank you, Commissioner Amorosi. Do I hear a second? Commissioner Brown on the second. All those in favor of denying the appeal, by show of hands. And those opposed? So the motion passes 5-2, and the appeal is denied. Thank you for coming. All right, so we'll move on to our final case of the evening. We'll hear from our city staff here. Mr. Kingsby.
Good evening, Commission. I'm Benny Kingsby, Planner 2, City of Tempe. In the interest of time, I'll keep this short. I know the applicant has prepared a presentation. I can probably go into more detail about the site plan, elevations, and landscape of this project. Clean Freak Car Wash is proposed on the northwest corner of Southern Avenue and Butte Avenue, which is approximately 580 feet west of McClintock Drive. The applicant is requesting a use permit to allow a car wash in the PCC 2 zoning district and a development plan review consisting of a site plan, building elevations, landscape plan for a new 5,648 square foot building. And with that said, staff is recommending approval of this project subject to conditions. And for the record, I just want to bring up that during study session, I did provide you with 4 written statements of opposition for this project, as well as 2 in support. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Okay, questions for Mr. Kingsby? Seeing none, we'll move along. We'll invite our applicant up. Mr. Meinhold, is it?
Mr. Meinhold is right over here, and he'll be right up in just a moment. For your record, my name is Rod Jarvis. I'm with the law firm of Earl, Curley, and Lagarde. And with me, as you pointed out, Mr. Meinhold of Larson Associates, the architect. He'll be up to discuss the site plan architecture in a moment. Then I'll come back to talk about the use permit requirements. Also with us are Mr. Trevor Craig and Mark McDowell, as well as Mr. Scott Grondin. Also, they're all principals of Clean Freak, and Ms. Carol Ackerman, also of Clean Freak, is here with us, so we can answer any operational questions you may have. Because this is the first entree of Clean Freak, a Clean Freak facility into Tempe, we thought it would be helpful to just briefly introduce to them. My first introduction to this company was as a customer. The very first Clean Freak car wash in the valley went into the area that where I use it, roughly 44th Street and McDowell. That Clean Freak car wash has been a nice stabilizing influence in that area. I became a fan of this company as a customer first, only began representing them a couple of years ago.
Jarvis, let me thank you and suggest, as you're moving forward, brevity may serve us all well.
I'm sorry?
Brevity may serve us all well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
What we want to tell you about this company is it's a family-owned business, Arizona homegrown. It's been successful because of its people, because of the way that they treat their employees. Their motto is "We serve people," and that doesn't just mean their customers. Of course, it does mean their customers, but also their employees. This is a brief history of Clean Freak's expansion in this valley. There are 21 facilities now. They've been very successful, again, because of the service that they render, and you're going to hear about the unique features of the kind of car washes they put together, as opposed to what you briefly heard about Cobblestone, specifically with regard to noise control. This picture reminds me of what you see when you go into the Clean Freak corporate facilities, because their halls are lined with pictures of employees who have been awarded for their particularly good service. I think it's indicative of the kind of company it is, and the reason that's important for you to consider is this is the kind of company you can count on to keep the promises and to follow the stipulations. With that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Mr. Meinhold.
Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As you know, Clean Freak's going into the Alameda character area, which is north of the 60 and west of the 101. More specifically, it'll be replacing the Joe's Crab Shack at the Southern Palms Shopping Center. The building will front Southern Avenue, adjacent to Butte Lane, as Mr. Kingsby said. I'll speed along. For purposes of our presentation, we've made our building blue on our site diagrams. Overhangs are light blue. Our pay station canopies are in orange. Landscaping areas are in green. We're about 3 times the amount of required landscaping on the site. As you can see, all of our access is from the shared drive within the Southern Palms Shopping Center. We're not asking for new operations off Southern or anything like that. The typical customer will wash the exterior of their car first and vacuum later. So coming in off the shared drive, they move through that stacking area to get to the pay stations. In that stacking area, we have enough room for about 15 cars, not counting the 3 that are at the pay stations, and that's before they enter either our internal drive or the shared drive. From the pay stations, they make 2 easy left turns to get to the entryway. We've got enough space there to put 7 cars between the pay station and the tunnel. I'm sure you're familiar with an express car wash where you get in. Clean Freak always has an employee there to give you the thumbs up that you're on the conveyor and let you move forward in neutral, where your car is entirely washed and dried inside that tunnel. We don't have anything outside there. Upon exiting, they can decide, about 30% of customers decide to vacuum their car. They can move straight east to the vacuum stalls, or they can move out back into the circulation of the shopping center. One other item I'd like to point out on the site plan and the plan view while we're there is we have support spaces to the north of the tunnel. Inside those support spaces are offices, equipment rooms, and a vacuum producer room and a vending area. The vending area and the tunnel itself have shutters installed so it can be closed off at night and firmly secured. We do this for security purposes. As I mentioned, there is a vacuum producer room inside that support space. It's roofed, it's completely walled. Unlike our competitor who was mentioned earlier, we don't leave our vacuum producers outside to add that noise to the area. We put ours inside, which produces a much quieter site. Moving on to the architectural features of the building, I'm sure the material board's around here somewhere, and I'm sure you looked at it during the study session. Compared to our competitors who like to put a lot of paint on their block, we're going with integral colored textured CMU, both split-faced and sandblasted, a lighter color scheme which is more open, inviting, and cleaner. We are Clean Freak after all. Along those lines, we do have some accents. One accent that Clean Freak was the first in Arizona to do is the circular entry and exit. This adds to the fun and whimsy of the car wash, a little bit of excitement when you take the kids there to get into. Another element that is a little different and goes along with a couple of design standards is the Flying V asymmetrical roof. one of the design standards for Tempe is to have a roof that's not just the flat parapet, straight line shot. We like our flying roof, and since we're in the Alameda district, one of their characters is a throwback to the post-war modern architecture that came up with Tempe as Tempe expanded. We feel our Flying V is very much representative of those roadside modern attractions you saw that came up in the post-war era. Last element I'll call out on the elevations is our spandrel windows along the front of the building. I say spandrel because they will be spandrel. We will have a solid wall behind it, so the noise isn't transmitted straight out of that glass the way our competitor from earlier does at some of their sites. So we'll keep any noise in that tunnel as in the tunnel as we can. I'm sure Mr. Jarvis will tell you about our noise study in just a moment, and I'll hand it back to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. You already know these standards. We'll consider them individually. First of all, significant increase in vehicular or pedestrian traffic. This is one of the standards we need to review and establish that we will not create a significant increase in vehicular or pedestrian traffic. This definitely will not. This is more typically a drive-by use. Customers typically are already on the road. There is no residential street impact at all because we're entirely on and off of Southern, which is a major arterial. Plenty of room has been pointed out to pull in and to park. We've also had extensive discussions, of course, with other cities where we have gone in. For example, Phoenix, Chandler, there's 2 sites there, Casa Grande, Flagstaff, all on similar locations to this one, major arterial mid-block. None of them has reported any significant increase in traffic as a result of the Clean Freak facility going in. Secondly, we must discuss nuisance arising from emission of odor, dust, gas, noise, vibration, smoke, heat, or glare at a level exceeding that of ambient conditions. It would seem that the only relevant noun in there would be noise. So let's talk about noise. We've already heard that these facilities are designed to keep the noise in better than what you heard Cobblestone does. We've had a sound study by Tony Sola, who's a well-known sound engineer in the Valley. He confirms that we will comply with Tempe's noise ordinance both day and night. So there will not be a noise issue. That's where the vacuum producers are and the blowers. We're going to move on. Contribution to the deterioration of the neighborhood or downgrading of property values. This is a common fear in zoning cases, as you all have heard many, many times. In this case, it is unfounded. We will add to value. There is a vacant building. It's been vacant for 2 years. There's been extensive efforts by the landlord to locate another restaurant at the location. It's been recommended that our landlord, our prospective landlord, talk with Fox Restaurants. He has done so. Fox Restaurants has said the area is not the right demographic for one of their concept restaurants. There's simply too many restaurants already in the area, and no one can use the rather unique building that Crab Shack used. It will not support another restaurant despite their extensive efforts, nearly 2 years to do that. So you've got a vacant building. That impact on property values is negative. However, the lovely building that Lance Meinhold has designed and the service, which obviously is needed in the market, which is the reason why Clean Freak continues to expand, and not one of their facilities over the past 9 years has closed. Though this use is needed, this is a service that's needed, and so we are not going to be degrading property values, we're going to be enhancing them. Move on. That exhibit is showing where the employees will be as they're watching over the site, and also there will be restricted hours of operation. I'm going to talk about that more in a minute.
We have a question from
Yes.
Commissioner Thornton, please.
Well, maybe you're a mind reader, because that's what I was going to ask. What are your hours of operation?
7 a.m., 7 p.m.
Thank you.
And again, that underscores the enhancing of property values and not deteriorating them. I'm sorry? 7 days a week. Next one is the commercial land use of the City of Tempe projected land use general plan of 2040. It's in compliance with that. All right, the next standard, compatibility with existing surrounding structures and uses. This building is of similar scale, as you notice. Complementary use, because there is no other car wash in that facility, in that shopping center, nor in the area, and the hours of operations we've just talked about. All right, adequate control of disruptive behavior both inside and outside the premises. That's where that slide was relevant. It showed where the employees are. There's 3 employees, one patrolling the outside after the cars exit, places where they're vacuuming, one inside the tube, and one at the pay gate. We also are going to have security measures such as cameras and the lighting. Of course, the landscaping will be in compliance with SEPTED standards. So we believe that we meet all of the standards that are set forth in the use permit. Be happy to answer any questions that you may ask.
Okay, questions for Mr. Jarvis? Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on your center island. It looks like there's 7 spots. Are those also vacuum areas that are outside of where you enter to get your car washed? Because it looks like you have some sort of units there.
The 7 spots north of the other vacuums are intended for vacuum stalls. There are some employee stalls over by the north of the pay station area.
So people can just go in there and vacuum their car and not have to wash their car.
One of the jobs of the employees is to try to make sure they don't do that. And since they typically have 3 employees on site when it's busier, one of those employees is always in that parking lot watching for things like that.
Sorry. Commissioner Johnson.
I just want to follow up on that design, and that's something that's I've been trying to understand. I'm familiar with the site, and I'm familiar with Sprouts being directly north of there, and that entry off of Southern Avenue, which is congested quite often, and that's kind of a T intersection right there. And I was thinking about those spots that face that main drive aisle, and it's not like it's a parking space where people will be parking and then go in and do their business and then leave. It seems like there'll be people in and out of there kind of more often. And I thought about this as I was just sitting here. Why isn't the site flip-flopped, mirrored, so that those spaces where people are going in and out so often are further away from that main T intersection and interfering less with that main traffic that's going to be constantly through that T intersection?
Of the customers who vacuum their car, about 80% do it after they wash.
Mm-hmm.
And we found that they're quick, once they've exit, they're looking for the parking stalls to vacuum. So I believe it's 13 spots directly east of the tunnel would be the ones they use first. The 7 spots off that spine drive would be overflow for once those 13 start getting filled up. Of customers who vacuum their car, it's not a great number that vacuum first and then wash later.
Fair enough. I accept that. Did you consider the opposite design, however? I mean, I understand,
to
but
mirror it east-west.
Yes.
We don't quite fit because of the outline of our lease area.
Of your
So
what?
putting the building and the pay stations on the east side, we would actually be into that shared drive. There's a jog in it toward our pay stations. And to flip it, we don't quite fit.
I see. There is a physical constraint to flipping that. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Vice Chair DiDomenico.
On all of the site plans, the actual property line extends to the east of Butte Avenue, I think it's called, and yet I don't really see anything happening on the other side of that drive that it's a part of your operation. So why is that?
Part of the agreement with the shopping center is that Sprouts has design review approval over anything we put in, and they don't want us to do anything that would block, disturb, or cause construction within that drive that would deter their customers. So although it's part of our lease property, we can't really do anything with it.
All right, so it's in a protected area within your leased property, so you're really not doing any improvements that are east of the west curb of Butte Ave. Thank you.
Commissioner Brown, did you have a question?
Oh, it was just
All right, any more questions? All right, we will thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we get to our public comment section. You all have been very patient. Thank you for sticking with us. Same rules. We'll give you 3 minutes. Use them well. First, I have Kathy Anderson has a comment to be read in the record saying, not wishing to allow car wash on Southern due to lightly congested shopping center with charter school, Taco Bell, Sprouts Market, noise and chemicals are concerned. Also, I have a card here for Ron Anderson. Are you here and still wish to speak? Come on down.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Ron Anderson. I'm a resident in the area living directly across the street on Southern in the Park Riviera townhomes across the street from the vacant, current vacant situation there. I fully understand and agree with their business plan and so forth. My main concern is that I hope that the traffic people have taken into consideration the exorbitant number of already existing traffic accidents that have occurred at Southern and Butte Avenue, which years ago did not even have a traffic light. It has a traffic light now. There have been numerous accidents at that because people are trying to turn left going east into the Sprouts Taco Bell area, or they're trying to turn right, or they're coming from Butte and going across the street at Southern into the Sprouts parking lot. We've lived there long enough to watch the Sprouts business grow substantially. What you have now is a quagmire of people trying to get into Sprouts and some trying to get out. And the so-called shared drive, I'm certainly appealing to them to take a look at who is going to share that driveway, because right now not many people are willing to share the driveway because as they come out, they're blocked from getting onto that little section of Butte to either turn right going west on Southern or turn left at the light to go east on Southern. Right now, nobody wishes to share. They're running into each other at that location because that dead ends into the Sprouts parking lot. So, and I live in that area. I have seen what has happened as Sprouts has grown over the years. I believe it would be detrimental to the area to have a car wash with people coming in and wanting to vacuum their cars, blah, 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 right next door. I have walked across Southern, or walked down Southern to Butte to cross the street. Nowadays, I prefer to jaywalk across to avoid the middle finger salutes from those people coming out of Sprouts or Taco Bell to get onto Southern and get out of the area. So now I simply jaywalk to go to my fitness gym during the afternoons. Otherwise, if I try to drive my car out of Juniper, if you think you have problems with the other car wash on Baseline and Roosevelt, wait till you have a car wash at Southern and Butte. You will have,
Mr.
right
Anderson,
now,
if you could wrap it up, please.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, wow. That was wrapped up. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Anderson. We appreciate your remarks. Okay. So Sandra Tignor, there's a letter for me to read. So here are the high points. Loud and disruptive noise pollution, increased density and traffic, parking stall overuse, total lack of planning and provision for any easy entrances, unmanageable traffic flow, underground tank draining in a densely populated area, numerous chemicals and sprays, unsightly destruction of grassy areas and trees, a design color palette complementary, completely contrary to character area, and decrease of adjacent homeowners' property values. Okay, so that's that guy. Sorry, I think this says Tim Rosh? Timmy Roth. Timmy Roth.
I'm just going to touch on the things that Ron did, plus there are some other issues, but the traffic is awful there. When you come in or go out on Butte, you have maybe 6 spaces in one lane, which is go straight or turn right. The other lane is turn left, and then there's the entry lane. It's awful. It's absolutely awful.
Got it.
The chemicals, that's a big worry, a big worry. I live directly across the street from this place, directly. And I'm concerned about the chemicals that they use. When are they going to drain their tanks? It's not going to be during opening hours. I know that. And when you come in, Butte, right at the end, it dead ends. You've got Taco Bell parking, Taco Bell drive-through coming out. You've got them, and then you've got Sprouts right in front. So it's an issue. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Timmy. Wait a minute. So we've got a card here for Rod Jarvis, but we've got you covered, I believe. And one for Lance Meinhold. I believe we've got you covered as well. All right, so anyone else from the public that wishes to speak? You'll have a chance to come back. Seeing no further public comment, we will invite our applicant. Please come back up and respond to what you've heard.
Thank you, sir. Very quickly, let's hit on those questions that the last speaker touched on. First of all, with regard to traffic, all the comments about traffic that you've heard are not relating to Southern. They're relating to the entryway onto the private property. This configuration of a driveway that tees, you got to turn right or left, presumably was designed so that cars would not just speed right on in between parked cars and endanger pedestrians. This is a very, very common configuration. I can name for you many, many malls, many, many strip centers that use this. The landlord has studied it, is comfortable with it, and it's really the landlord's issue. We can do nothing about the landlord's parking configuration. The fact of the matter is that we're replacing a business that was there already, and it was a business that was a restaurant like 7 others in that facility. Restaurants tend to concentrate traffic at meal times, i.e. the noon hour and the dinner hour. Our traffic is spread throughout the day, is intermittent. We do not concentrate it at the noon hour or at the dinner hour. Therefore, whatever clogging was extant when Crab Shack was there will actually be less with us. With regard to chemicals, the question was raised about dangerous chemicals. We have a letter from the provider who I won't read the whole thing in the interest of time. These products are safe. They do not contain any toxic chemicals. They are biodegradable, harmless to waste treatment systems. Really, just think about it for a moment. We have an employee in the tube at all times. The employee does not wear a face mask. This has been true at all of the Clean Freaks for the past 9 years. No problems. This is not a dangerous chemical situation. And if that employee is in fact safe, which he or she is, how much safer is the person who lives all the way across Southern Avenue? There just is no danger from chemicals. With regard to draining, that tank that takes the separated material is drained once a year. So that's not going to be a problem. Probably not happen during the peak of business, probably happen after the business closes, but it's once a year. I think that answers all the questions that were raised. Be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Vice Chair DiDomenico, please.
Just one quick one. What's the expectation for number of customer trips per day?
I've seen the number of 300 to 500 spread throughout the day.
300 to 500,
right,
7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Any guesstimate on what a 9,000 square foot Joe's Crab Shack generates?
It's less than that, but again, the issue that was raised was the clogging of Butte, and we are not a peak time concentrator. We'll actually have less clogging during that particular time. This is a throughout the day drive-by kind of use primarily. This is not primarily a destination use.
And how would you respond to accusations that car washes directly cause monsoons?
Car washes directly cause monsoons. Well, that's an interesting concept. And
I know when I wash my car.
Then it rains.
Yeah.
You know, if they've perfected that, I think we need to be standing in front of them asking permission, because then they have powers that exceed any that I've ever possessed.
All right, Commissioner Brown.
The water that's used to wash cars, is it recycled?
Yes.
So that's good. What are you doing for retention basins or retention tanks, civil engineering wise?
Underground retention in the parking areas.
Which is, I think, pretty typical for small
Yes.
pad developments.
Yes.
And the chemicals, are we talking about soap, like what I use to wash my car in my front yard?
Very similar, yes.
I was surprised to read that in the write-up. I never considered that to be an issue, and
A lot of the cleaning is from the force of the spray and the brushes.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for our applicant? Seeing none, I will thank you.
Very much.
And we'll ask, was it Mr. Kingsby? Will you reframe the issue for us quickly?
Yes, so Clean Freak Car Wash is requesting a use permit to allow a car wash in the PCC 2 zoning district, as well as a development plan review consisting of a site plan, building elevations, and landscape plan for a new 5,648 square foot building.
Okay, thank you. So we are to evaluate the use permit criteria, which we're familiar with, if we think they are a nuisance, et cetera. And we're going to give our review on the plan as well. What are our thoughts, Commission? Commissioner Brown.
I think the design of the building is quite nice. I couldn't tell you how much better I like it than the duck. And there's a good bit of landscaping in front. I think it's a nice design, and it seems to be, the site seems to be well organized, distributing the parking out back into the parking lot. The existing parking layout of the whole site is kind of generous. I don't think that any problems that Sprouts may or may not contribute are really relevant to this subject. Like the other project we heard earlier today, I'm sorry, the neighborhood has problems, but the big problem is the number of people and the number of cars, which is part of our city's success. So I'm in favor of the project.
Thank you. Other comments? Commissioner Thornton.
Thank you. First of all, to everyone in the audience, thank you so much for bearing with us tonight. I know you didn't expect to be the last on the agenda, so thank you. I am in this parking lot at least 4 times a week because I shop at Sprouts and I love to Goodwill shop. So I'm there all the time. There's plenty of room. It's a huge parking lot, and I think this is a great fit, and we actually need this car wash in this area. So I appreciate it, and hopefully it passes so I can frequent it, and I am going to support this project. Yeah, I'll be a clean freak.
Commissioner Sumner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you went and looked at my car right now, you'd see one of your stickers on the front window. I've been a customer for about 3 years. I go to your original one that I had no idea was the original one up on McDowell. It's a very small site compared to this, I'll say. The one in Chandler, closer to home, is much smaller than this. So when I see the site plan, I'm not concerned. I'm further impressed that there's a little bit of a grade there to protect from the noise. I see that the blowers, as we all know from other cases, are the noisiest part, and they're pretty far to the east and facing east, away from any of the residential. So I've got no problem supporting this and look forward to the opening.
All right. Any more comments? All right, I'm going to jump in then. Yeah, I think it's a good project. I commend you on using Trenwith. I know you could, as you said, you could have just painted block. Trenwith is a little pricier and it's nicer. I think that's good. Not super crazy about the orange and the blue, but you know, it's car wash and that's what you're going to get. All right, so I will say I am going to be supporting the project. Any more comments, Commissioner Thornton?
I was just going to be prepared to make a motion.
Please do.
I move for the approval of PL 180052.
Okay. Motion to approve from Commissioner Thornton and seconded from Commissioner, my brain is falling apart, Sumners. Thank you. All those in favor by show of hands, please. And that looks like 7 to me. So, motion passes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Staff announcements and upcoming future applications.
Chairman and Commission members, for August 28th, we have a request for 2 use permit standards to reduce the rear and side yard setbacks and a development plan review for a new two-story multifamily development consisting of 5 dwelling units for Tempe student housing located on 1432 and 1436 South Bernardin Lane. That's all we have for that agenda.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you.